Hi, welcome to Talk About the Passion. I'm your host, Christian Campagna. It's been a minute. Right now, it's October in 2019. The last episode of this podcast came out in July. I've had a few life-changing events happening that kind of got in the way a little bit, but here we are, back again. This is the first of 3 new episodes I have done right now, and I've been working with a couple other people to hopefully get something set up, and we'll get this train back on track with weekly episodes yet again. Good to see ya. So a few things first. A month or so ago, I got a text message from a friend that said, "Congratulations." I didn't know what I did. I thought maybe I had a baby I didn't know about, or a raffle I didn't know I signed up for or something. I asked what for, and she said, "Your podcast was nominated for a Boston Music Award." I immediately dropped the phone and fell to my knees and started crying. I could hear her on the phone on the floor. Are you okay? Hello, Christian? I'm kidding. That didn't happen. It was just a text message. One that certainly made my day and made me rethink the effort and work I was putting into this podcast and also the work I wasn't putting in. So here I am getting the band back together, as it were. There's a ceremony in December at the House of Blues in Boston, and if you have a minute and dig this podcast, you can vote for me at the website bostonmusicawards.com. My friends in the band Worshipper are also up for an award, so feel free to check that box as well if you want. You don't have to do any of this. You can tell me to leave you alone. I get it. Today's episode is called It's Alive. It's a discussion about live records with Brian Smith and Guy Weatherbee. Brian and Guy are regulars here, and in the past we've done some episodes where we essentially list off songs or artists, and that was the idea here, but this one was more of a loose affair. I don't think... Loose affair. I don't think we actually start with each other's records until maybe a half hour or so into this, and we really only cover 5 or 6 records. It's mostly an open conversation about live records, live recordings, the bootlegs, live shows and that kind of thing. And re-listening to this just made this, it's a little under 2 hours episode. Before editing it, made me excited to, bring it to the public. Some of my, favorite podcasts and radio shows through the years have been ones that are more of like a, loose format conversation that at least, keep the listener interested anyway. I think we accomplished that here and then some. I love hanging out with these two, and these conversations would be happening even without the tape rolling, which is, why it comes off sounding so natural. I'm on social media at Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Talk About the Passion podcast, and you should be able to find it. Same goes for if you want to listen to episodes of this. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Anyway, enough about me and my life. Let's get this one started. This is episode 46. It's Alive with Brian and Guy. Thank you for listening. Hello, welcome to Talk About the Passion. I'm here with my friends Guy and Brian.
Yep. Hello. Back again, finally.
Yeah, we're back again.
We're here in a room.
We're here in
again,
a room.
Yep. Awesome. Great
Today,
to see you guys.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys. The last time we did this, I think, was in May. And
I think so. It was the Beastie Boys.
Yeah, we did. Oh, yeah, you and I did the Beastie Boys, and then we did...
Yeah.
We still have one that I haven't...
The
guitar one.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was a good
underrated
one.
guitarist.
Yeah, I got to go through that one because it's we went pretty deep.
That was a
on
long one.
Yeah.
We got
Carried away.
Yeah. But today...
All the wings of guitar solos. Right?
Yeah, but there's a lot of guys I didn't know that you told me about, and then you
right. Yeah. Oh, same. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's sort of the point of this.
Yeah, it makes it fun to listen back to them because even though I'm doing them,
right.
I gotta think about what we just did, what we just talked about.
Right.
Because we talked about, Steve and Billy and Bruce and Sally. I don't know any of those guys.
Right. Yeah.
Christian totally digs them.
Right.
Ryan never even told me. I've been friends for 40 years and didn't
right.
tell me.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't know about Bruce Kulick? Really, dude? I have 19 of his solo albums. Every single one of them's from Japan.
Yeah.
Really? I never laid those on you? You gotta love it.
Yeah, he's big in Japan.
So it's always good to listen back, even ironically, right? To
Yeah.
say, I gotta check that stuff out.
Yeah, definitely. Today we're going to talk about live records. And initially when we started talking about this, we all kind of were thinking, I can't really think of many. And then as you start to get into it,
there'll be a couple that we can talk about, some
Right.
old favorites. Out of the three of us, it's well known among the three of us that Brian loves live records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot more than I do. I don't
Right.
rate them very high.
yeah,
But yeah, when we were thinking about today's podcast, I thought about it for 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
I went, there are some essential records. Oh, some of my favorite records ever.
Right.
The number one record with a bullet is the live record by this band or this
Right.
musician. It kind of shocked me a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
There's certainly live albums
Stuff
I
that
like.
didn't really come to mind until
Yeah,
you thought about it.
There's stuff I like, but I'm like, oh no, that I love that. I'd take a bullet for that album.
Yeah.
Right. It's a live record. I wouldn't have thought of that. So
Yep.
that's fun too.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Think-
and I mean,
think about that.
I've got. Oh my God. I mean,
And then maybe later I'll make it really hard
So-
on all of us and say, so if you had to pick one live album to live with forever,
Yeah.
what's the one? What's
oh right. No,
what's
that's
that?
that's
That-
an even
Right.
tougher.
It's
call.
impossible, but
Could be
I'll
fun
force
to-
you guys to pick.
All right. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So two of the most famous ones that aren't or supposed to be fake or Kiss Alive.
Yeah,
Right.
fake live records,
Right,
Stuff
yeah.
where it's
Right. Where
heavy,
I mean, fake.
heavily
Overdubbed,
studio,
Heavily
overdubbed.
dubbed
yeah,
over.
fixed
Right.
up.
What was the other one? Kiss Alive for
The
sure.
other one I was thinking of was that people say it isn't real is Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard that's.
I've never.
Same
I mean,
thing,
I'm a huge
overdubbed.
Priest fan. And I
Yeah.
love that record.
Yeah.
And I've never.
It's been kept on the down low about Exit Stage Left by Rush too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overdub work on
Right.
that. That just it wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
The whole idea was, and I want to say it was Neil Peart, the drummer, but I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Someone in Rush was interviewed about that many years ago. I was always a diehard Rush fan.
Yeah.
Did a lot of time reading about the band, more than I care to admit, but too late now.
Yeah.
And they half admitted to it in some interview along the way. Look, what we were trying to do, here's how we'll justify overdubbing.
Right.
We're trying to give you, the listener, our fan, your money, your hard-earned money, the best bang for the buck. So this is what we wanted to sound like,
Right.
and what we intended to sound like when we were playing it live.
Right.
Yeah.
We
I
broke
mean,
a string. Getty coughed at one point
Right.
during a vocal part,
yeah.
so we cleaned that
Yeah,
up
we cut
for
it
you.
out. Right.
Or there was a bit of feedback at the end of the song, so we faded it out and brought
Right.
in the crowd sound from something
Yeah.
else to cover it up.
Right.
But minus that, this is really what it sounded like.
Yeah.
So that's our justification. So
Right.
we
Yeah,
did
and I mean-
Yeah.
clean it, quote unquote.
Right.
But this is why.
Right.
And again, as a fan, I'm gonna. Unless it's ridiculous, I'm probably going to go, oh, that sounds reasonable to me.
That sounds good.
Yeah, and I
Right.
mean, and like the Kiss Alive record, it's widely documented, even by them, that
Right.
that it's a lot of it is overdubbed.
It was
and
too rough when they did it live,
Yeah.
and they had to really
and-
clean it up.
1975.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing about that record is that, for me anyway, and I'm not Kiss Army. You know,
Yeah,
I'm a
right.
bigger Ace Frehley fan than a Kiss fan. But even though you know it's fake, you feel like you're at a show when you
Yeah.
put it on. It really, so if their goal was to give you the impression of what it was like to see the band live,
Right.
that's what
It's a
they-
success,
they
right?
Succeeded.
Yeah.
They
That's
did that.
I feel the same way. I was too young to see Rush when they were touring in 1980, 1981. And Exit Stage Left was my
Yeah.
documentary.
Yeah.
But just like any good fiction story, you read it and sometimes you feel like you're there. You're like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm in the haunted house and the ghost is
Right.
coming down. If you tell it well, even though it's fake,
Yeah.
it really feels like you're there. And that's I don't mind
And
Yeah.
that it's not raw. And plus, trust me, I think everybody in this particular room has heard Rush bootlegs.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
some are great,
Yeah.
and some are
Some are-
awful. But the great ones sound as good, if not better, than Exit Stage Left, and they're
Yeah.
unretouched. So I know
Right.
how good the band
Yeah,
is
of
live.
absolutely.
In retrospect, it doesn't
Yeah, they
matter
don't
what they
have to,
did to
right.
Exit Stage
And-
Left. They've proven it to me already.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
Yeah.
recently I bought a copy of the live Alcatraz record.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That is a pretty wide. I mean, I would say they're not necessarily a household name, but pretty
Right.
widely known band.
Yeah.
And it's a well-known record. And Graham Bonnet just recently re-released it, untouched, and said, the one everybody's heard for all these years has had stuff fixed and blah
Right.
blah blah blah.
Right.
This is the raw tape from the
Right.
board. Period. There's nothing. And the truth of the matter is, without being them, I couldn't really tell the difference.
Yeah.
And that really says a lot to me. Now, I'm sure that there's differences.
Yeah.
Right.
But it wasn't like I kind of thought I'm going to put this in and it's going to sound like a bootleg.
Yeah.
But it you know what I mean? It
Right.
And I suppose that variants could be different for different things, for sure. Like you said, I've got bootlegs that are basically almost unlistenable.
Right.
But to be fair, even though that's untouched and raw, that's not what it sounded like at that show.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a bad recording.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of that too. You have
And-
to split that right down the middle.
Yeah,
too.
and when you're younger, or for me, you just think this is a recording of this show, like for the micro. You don't.
Yeah, some
you
guy
don't
was
realize what really goes into putting on a show of any size and recording it isn't as simple as just making a recording of it and handing it out afterwards. And
For a lot of bands, it's much harder than going into the studio to get it right.
yeah,
It's
and
nail it.
especially I would
It's
say
very
bands
rare
like
to get it
Rush
right.
or a band like maybe Genesis or Yes or something, where the songs that playing the song to begin with at all is a nightmare.
Right.
Right.
Now you also want it to be in this giant room
Hockey arena.
in a hockey arena, and it's supposed to sound, for a lot of the people, it's supposed to sound like the record, and if it
Right.
doesn't, they're going to be disappointed
Yeah.
or
Right.
upset. So there's so many variables, I think, in recording something live
Yeah.
that, and to be honest, I've got some that are pretty bad
Yeah.
that are awesome because they're so raw and bad.
Right.
So I guess the thing with live records is I take every one as itself. I don't
Yeah.
compare them to each other because
Right.
each one's a different thing to me.
You know,
Yeah.
when you're a band and you're playing live, things go by. Things that you on stage as a performer, oh man, I practically it sounds like I dropped my guitar,
Yeah.
unnoticed by the majority of the audience, and it goes by and it's live in the moment. And especially back in the day, there's no recorders, there's
Right.
no phones, nothing's going on. It's just part of the experience, and
Yeah.
you recover even if anybody noticed or they didn't, and you move on. All that stuff is blown up in 3D to be dissected once you get the reels
Right.
back,
Right.
if you
Yeah.
will, or the tape back from the live show back in the day,
Yeah.
right? And so now listen to that. That's when you put your stick through the drum. Nobody noticed it
right.
at the time.
Yeah.
It was the world's best gig we ever had.
Right.
People were standing on their seats, but it ruins the whole
Right,
last
yeah,
2 minutes of
yeah,
that song
yeah,
here,
yeah.
and you go prr, prr,
Right.
through this right through the drum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So you got to fix that, or you got to leave that song off the document. You're like, that's the end. You know what can we do? And I
Yeah.
see how bands do it. You know,
Yeah.
when you're a fan and you're a little naive about it, you can get chuffed
Yeah.
and say that's
Yeah.
not the real thing.
Well,
But you
and-
get
and-
a little bit older, a little bit more experience. You're like, whatever they have to
Yeah,
do.
what I have to do to make
The
it.
document is awesome,
And sometimes-
it's amazing at that point when you finally do hear a live record that's 100% untouched.
Yeah.
Well, why are they making such a big deal out of that? You're like, because
Right.
it's incredibly rare
Yeah.
to get a whole set untouched,
Yeah, where
unretouched
nothing-
live,
yeah,
where
right.
practically nothing went wrong, and in another way, everything went right.
Right.
That's so rare,
Yeah.
right?
yeah. I mean, almost probably impossible.
Almost impossible.
Especially again, depending on what you're doing.
for sure.
You know, I don't think it maybe would be impossible or as impossible for the Cro-Mags to have one of those shows as
Right.
it would be for the Boston Symphony Orchestra.
Right.
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 You know, I
Different-
mean, now, and I don't, by that, I'm not trying to obviously say I
No.
fucking love the Cro-Mags. I'm
Right.
not saying, but what I'm saying is that 4 or 5 people playing, you know, some really harsh, abrasive music is a lot different than 36 people playing
Right.
in a room you can hear a pin drop in, and everybody's, you know, you could hear somebody breathing.
Right.
It's going to change the
Right.
dynamic of what, and anybody who's ever been to a lot of shows knows that where you sit in the building will change
Yeah,
what the
absolutely.
band
Yeah.
sounds like.
Well,
I've been to Rush shows where I thought, "God, they sound terrible tonight," and then go to the bathroom and hear them from a
Yeah,
different
all
part
of a
of the
sudden you
room,
hear,
and it
like,
sounds
oh, it's
amazing.
Fantastic.
You can hear
The
Alex's
mix is
guitar, right?
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you know, I think that the recording of a live record is a huge endeavor
Yeah,
to
no,
even do it at all.
Yeah.
This is probably way out of order, and maybe we'll edit this in later, but I'm going to preempt I hope we'll talk about some of our favorite live albums. It's
Yeah.
probably the plan.
Yeah.
But I'm going to preempt one of mine with a sidebar that's coming way before I even talk about the album. And you guys might know this. If you've listened to a lot of live jazz albums, you'll notice a lot of times, and this is a particular pet peeve, so I just want to cover it while I'm thinking about it. Especially pianists, if they're the composer on the gig, or they wrote the song, or they're actually the band leader, right? It's the pianist, right? They will... a lot of times in a live recording, even on studio recordings, they will hum along.
Oh yeah.
Bud Powell's
with the melody.
Yep.
And not all of them are singers.
Right.
And some of them are terrible.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do to isolate that vocal when you're recording an acoustic piano, especially back in the day.
Right.
The microphone's got to go over the soundboard. Even on an upright, which most of them didn't play, but on a grand, a baby grand, that tabletop goes up and you put those microphones in the soundboard. If the guy is sitting there going and he's singing along with his melody while he's playing, you're going to catch some of that. Now,
absolutely.
Once you notice that, and I'm probably ruining 1,000 jazz records for people as I speak, if you're listening to this, turn it off. If you start to notice that, that's one of the first things you'll go to right away. And I've got a sensitivity to it since the first time I heard it with one of my favorite artists. But he's not a singer, and he's completely his tone is one note.
Who was this?
Dave Brubeck.
Brubeck.
So there's a couple of very famous live records where his toneless singing, I mean, he doesn't even stick with the melody. He's just going, and that's all I can hear. And I can't listen to the record for 1 minute. I'm like, these are such great recordings. And I'm looking at the set list of the song. I'm like, oh man, Strange Meadowlark. I can't wait to listen to that live in 1960.
And
he's like, I'm like, oh, what is
Interestingly
going on?
enough, two of my
It's such
favorite,
a weird thing. And when you finally hear it and realize what's going on, you're like, oh, that's what's happened. I see. I've watched live video of bands and seen some of the pianists singing along. I'm like, oh, that's what's going on.
Right.
You kind of understand, but now you totally unequivocally get what's going on. That's just they're so into it. That's the way they can play. They're improvising, so they're I get it, right? They're almost scatting along with their own movement. But if you can hear it and it's not good, it taps me out. And so there's literally dozens of records that I keep having to tap out on because I keep hearing that guy.
Right. Yeah. Interestingly enough, two of my favorite jazz artists of all time are well known for it.
Yeah.
Neither of whom is a pianist.
Interesting.
And they're both do it to such a degree that it appears on studio records too. You could just hear it all the time.
I've heard it like Lionel Hampton.
Lionel Hampton is one of them. All the time. And Elvin.
Elvin? Really?
Elvin, not so much singing along, but almost like exclamations, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
The James Brown thing.
The James Brown thing,
In those two cases, I actually have found it, for those guys, very endearing. It's part of...
Right, it's part of the
You can
vibe,
tell how stoked Lionel Hampton is.
Right.
In a related thing to that, which is funny, is that there's a very famous clip of the Benny Goodman Band playing Sing, Sing, Sing from a movie called Hollywood Hotel.
Okay.
Or it may be called Hotel Hollywood. Either way. And one of the things I love so much about it is that there's a Lionel Hampton vocalization in it. He's not on the cut. But he was in the room.
Right.
And there's one point happens where Benny Goodman plays some note, and in the back you hear Lionel Hampton going, yeah! And you're like, oh, Lionel's vocalization is going to be on this record. He's not even playing in the song. He's
just so excited.
And, he's sometimes over the top with it. I mean,
I've heard Lionel, and he doesn't bother me, but I've switched a gear with him. It's so obvious, and it's so prominent on his recordings. It's part of it, and it makes me laugh. It's amusing to me.
Of course.
I'm not hurt by, and I'm not as deep into Lionel as I am into Dave Brubeck either.
Sure, right.
So it doesn't, I've got plenty of Lionel's records, put them on, and they amuse me for a half an hour.
Somebody that does it a lot that I can't think if I've heard it on a record, but I know for a fact we've seen this person do it live, is Joe Jackson.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yep.
You know, and I've got a bunch of live Joe Jackson, but I can't recall ever hearing it on a record.
It
but
must either be, very muted, or it's so part of the music. And plus, he's a great singer.
Right.
yeah, true
So
enough.
now, if he's humming
yeah.
along, I'm probably not even hearing it because he's in. It's when the guys are toneless that it really starts to go. I understand what's going on, but I don't want to listen to it. If I was in a room watching it live, no problem.
Right.
I could probably get away with it, but it's just one of those little things. You're like, oh man. Listen to that record again.
Some of the recordings of the jazz records, it is an endearing thing too, with the way they're in those clubs.
Oh yeah.
There's that Miles Davis live at the Plug Nickel box set, and you hear like people eating and glasses and waitresses.
One of my favorite records is that record, and by extension, records that were recorded at clubs like that, like the Black Hawk and stuff like the Vanguard. Really tiny places.
You can tell
where somebody very smartly on the gig, on the job, said, hey, we're going to record this. And usually it's on a 2-track reel back in the day. Said, you know what? Just for kicks, to get the ambiance of the place. Because they were thinking, we're not just going to record the bass and the drums and the piano. Usually they had one microphone to position at the right spot to capture all of it. No separate mics, right? And then one more mic. You get stereo pair, and sometimes it was mono, but you had 2 inputs. We'll put one pointed toward the back of the club, or put a microphone at the back of the club and capture some of the
capture that warmth,
right? Some of the room. And so there's a Cal Jader. He was a vibraphonist, pianist. There's a club gig of his that I love. It's not my favorite tunes, and it's early. I actually like his stuff where he started to get into guitar and synthesizer in the 70s when people thought he tapped out. I do like his early stuff.
Kind of had a Miles thing there where people were like, or a Dylan thing where he went in a direction that people said it's not right.
Well, he ventured into some smooth jazz, but with a Latin feel. So it really put some people off. I get it, but I love it. But his early stuff, which is a little more composed and not quite as out there, is still really great. And one of those gigs is just like that Miles record you brought up, where you can hear a cash register go, ching ching, and the guy goes, 30? I'll give you 5. Go ahead and put it on the table. And just
amazing,
as soon as he says that, you hear this this hi-hat and then this doo-doo-doo, and the vibes come in. You're like, it's part of the record now. 30? I'll give you 5. Put it.
Have you ever had that experience?
All that stuff is part of the record, right? Oh, it's so good.
And like you said, with jazz records, that stuff is all the time.
All the time, right?
Like one of the... to touch into where we were going with like our favorite ones. One of my favorites is the Benny Goodman band at Carnegie Hall, which is hard for people to imagine now, but at the time that would be like the Dead Kennedys playing at Scullers. The venue was so upper crust, and these big band musicians were basically punks considered. You know what I mean? So it was a massive thing that they were going to play there at all. And it's amazing because the ambiance of the way that the room was recorded is very primitive to now. That was 1938. And in a lot of pictures of the show, over the stage, maybe like 40 feet up, is a mic.
Just hanging.
And the fucking gig was recorded by a hanging room mic, right? And it's a big band, and you've got 16, 18 guys at a clip. And throughout the show, you can hear people coughing. You can hear, Gene Krupa asking the guy for bring me a bottle of water, whatever. And it's so, for me, it's like, it's not like being there, but it's like, wow, it's like having the room in the recording really makes it.
That's a good way to say it. Having a room in the recording.
Because I have some live recordings where the band sounds phenomenal. There's no room noise. I've even got a few that come right off a board with no crowd noise.
It's very.
And it's not really a live record anymore.
It isn't.
It's like I want that in there. And there's a few. I forget which one it is. Is it Different Stages? There's a Rush album where Geddy takes a short solo, which is, if you're a Rush fan, you're always waiting for Geddy to play something outside of the box, and he's usually no, I'm not going to do that.
Not going to do it.
He just plays this little solo, and when you have it cranked up loud enough, or you have it on headphones, some guy out in the crowd goes, shake it off, Alex. Like, it's going to be okay. We're like getting, and it's just, that's awesome, you know? Like,
that's on Exit Stage Left, too, right? In YYZ, right before there's the pause, and you hear someone in the crowd go, "Go get it!"
Right.
I always hear that. Go get it!
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting to point out that sometimes one of the coolest things that endears a live record to you isn't the band at all.
Right. It's the room itself or what's going on in that room.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the experience of the live record versus a studio record. You know, they're trying to give you some of that energy, some of the feel and the flavor of being there. And by the time it's, you know, the 1970s, there's, 30 some odd years of live recordings to look back on. Yeah. And all those guys in the rock bands making music at the time are listening to their records and their parents' records, and some of those are live and going, we got to, for our band, we got to do something like that. We got to bring the room. We got to bring the stage.
Also, live records. Interestingly enough, we keep referring to the room. Live records recorded outside, totally different.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like, I've always thought it's pretty entertaining idea to think how many people were at Woodstock, and how little of the crowd you hear on a live recording of Woodstock.
Right.
There's 500,000 people. Yeah. And it's like a fade in the back. Yeah. You know, it's not a. Yeah. But I've got a live record of Wall of Voodoo, where it's a professionally made record they released, and the crowd is louder than the band in this tiny little bar, and like you hear everybody talking, you hear the beer glasses and everything, and you're like, at some point you're like, why are you people all showing up to a show that you want to talk through? But
the Rolling Stones Get Your Yeah-Yeahs Out album.
Oh yeah.
So the intro,
cool record.
Yeah, right before Sympathy for the Devil, there's a woman that was like probably sitting on the stage but very clearly going, "Paint it black, paint it black, paint it black," and they kind of slowly just.
That's the one with. I'm not a huge Stones guy. That's the one with Charlie Watts on the front, right? Yeah, with the drum and everything. Yeah.
I have a bootleg tape of a Grateful Dead show. Well, I don't have anymore, but for years I had. It was from the 80s. They had a song called Stella Blue. That was a real slow song. It has like a lot of empty space in it. And that was the height of when you could tape their shows. So the taping section would be like, 30, 40 people there with those mic stands and stuff. Right. So someone must have been standing behind the thing, but this like really quiet part, and this has to be on every tape ever, but just someone all of a sudden goes, "Fuck you!" It's the best fucking thing in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I just remember, like, I would always rewind that.
You spend the whole tape waiting for it to come. You're like, I know it's coming at some point.
I wish I knew what that was.
Oddly enough, too, in Rush bootlegs, very common at some point for somebody to yell Getty.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of all things, right?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, on that one, that guy yells out to Alex, but you never. It's always some guy out in the fucking nosebleeds going, Getty, right? Like what? And I can say too, I don't think I have anywhere Getty responds.
Yeah.
No.
Where he ever is like, oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So what would you like for both of you? What was maybe the first live record that you got that you like sort of started loving?
Kiss Alive was the first one for me. Yeah. I'd seen it at a neighbor's house in 1977. Yeah. I think is when it came out, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about it. Didn't know what the music. Had no idea. But I was fascinated by the album cover. Like, why are these guys like superheroes? Like, blah 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 blah. And I talked about it relentlessly until my parents bought it for my next birthday. Yeah. And of course, at the time, had no idea that it was fake in any way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember like being just like fascinated with the idea that this was recorded at a Kiss at a show.
Right.
And so yeah, that would be the first one I ever actually had.
And the other thing with like especially in the 70s was a lot of times those records were gatefold, so you had all these pictures, and then sometimes even the inner sleeve would have more. So
and on that record, that back picture from the stage of the crowd with the lights up, you know what I mean? Is awesome. And there's a dude fucking holding a joint. Yeah. And you're like, I mean that. Yeah. Yeah.
Those two guys. I've seen
guys holding the Kiss banner, and
if you look that up, you can. There's like pictures of them online now, like as adults holding that. Like.
No. Yeah. Awesome.
I can't remember their names.
I think that shot. What was it? The shot. I think it's a shot from a Rush live record, or just a Rush live shot that was famously reused like on a Rainbow album cover.
Oh, really?
Like that.
Oh, that's funny.
I'll have to look into that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The crowd.
Yeah, they
So it's like the crowd isn't actually the crowd from that show.
It's a Rush show, and it's a very famous black and white. I think Finn Costello, one of their photographers from forever ago, took the shot, and it's a very famous shot. And it's a crowd, and they're all got Rush T-shirts on, and they're holding up a hand-painted Rush banner.
Okay.
And again, it's one of those, and the whole crowd is lit up. It's 2 hours before the show.
Yeah. Right.
And everybody's filled in,
Okay.
and they're holding up their banner at the front of the stage, right?
Yeah.
So very infamously, there's a live like Rainbow record where they doctored all the Rush T-shirts and that banner out,
and just used that picture.
and without permission, like flipped it around 180 and put Rainbow on that instead of Rush, and just threw it
Blackmore's
on a live,
a prick, huh?
on a live album.
Right? Yeah.
Right?
That's like one.
I mean, not
many-
even on the same record label, right? We're just going to take that picture. Awesome. That'd be. Man, I wish our crowd looked like that. That's awesome. Brought their own banners, and everybody wore a shirt. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That Kiss record, I wasn't as big of a fan, but around the same time, 77, 78, I totally knew who they were.
Yeah.
And I was having my parents buy me records if they would.
Right.
And then, of course, in the neighborhood, as we rode around on bikes, we're all talking about Kiss.
Yeah.
And if anybody had a record that we didn't have, we were trading them.
Yeah.
I remember one of our, a guy that lived down the street from us had Love Gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen that, and my parents certainly weren't buying that based on the album cover. Like, the guys dressed in makeup and high boots, that's fine. A bunch of naked women at their
Chicks
feet,
crawling to us.
we're not.
On a
no.
record called Love Gun.
We're not doing it, right?
You know,
We're
I mean,
not,
right,
no,
yeah,
no. You can have Dress to Kill, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's.
And
a
I
cool
got Dress to
record,
Kill.
too.
So, but the live record I knew about, and Brian had it, and again, a neighbor I knew had it, and he wanted to trade me. I traded him the Gene Simmons solo album for the live album Gatefold with only side 3 and 4 in it.
Oh.
So it only had one record.
Right.
Still, I would argue, still a decent trade. You won.
And
was gonna say
I
that.
thought so too.
Yeah.
I got it home, and again, as anybody who's ever held that physical record in place, you look at the cover and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Oh,
This
yeah.
looks insane. You put the record on, this sounds insane. You keep flipping it over and looking at every picture you can, and you're like, these guys are out of control.
Yeah, and I
This
remember
is chaos. I wonder what it would be like.
And
to
as a
do
kid,
that,
I
right?
remember thinking that, having seen, live performances of music and stuff on television and things like that, one of the things about that album cover, too, that really sent me was the idea that the way the shot is taken on the cover, you can see how fucking beat up the stage is. It's all marked up and shit.
Right, yeah.
And it doesn't... when you see these things on TV, these places look like the Taj Mahal.
Right, yeah.
And then the way that it looks, it just looks filthy.
It's like a wood stage.
Yeah, it's like a
rickety.
plywood stage. It's all
Right.
fucked
And
up
again,
with tape stuck to
like,
it. And
like you, Brian, I'm looking at it through the lens of an 8, 9, 10-year-old.
yeah, exactly.
I'm
And it's
way
like,
too young to
oh.
go to any shows.
Right.
I'm not going to any concerts
Yeah.
yet.
Nothing,
I
right.
can't imagine what it must be like to be there. This is bringing me as close as
And
I
then
can.
later on, when I did go to shows, you were like, wow, that record, as fake as it turned out to be or whatever, that captures that.
Captures that
feeling
essence
of
if you
being in
see
a live show.
any band live at an arena that was anything even remotely like that, anything that's rock and roll, you're like,
That
wow,
captured
that's
it,
it.
Somebody, I forget who it was, but somebody famously said that record is so good of a live document that you get a contact high listening to it, and it really is. It really is that good.
Yeah,
I would argue that Kiss Alive 2 is not anywhere near as good.
That was the one my brother had a live, but my introduction to Kiss was like Destroyer and then Love Gun and then Alive 2. And that's the one my dad had taken us to see, the Love Gun tour.
Awesome.
But he came home with Cheap Trick Buddha.
Oh my God, yeah.
right.
And he said that these are the guys that we're gonna see with Kiss, which coincidentally we got there late and didn't even see Cheap Trick.
Oh, man.
But I remember him bringing that record home, and he played the "Ain't That a Shame"
Yeah.
because he grew up in the '50s, so
sure.
that was like his music. And I remember he just loved that cover. 'cause
Right,
he
just
did
check
that
it out.
weird-
This
Yeah.
hip new band is.
And that's a really great live
That's a
record,
great
too.
Like and the pictures on. So that was always like drew me in, just these pictures of these.
And Robin
guys.
Zander talking to the crowd, like, because it's Japanese, everything he says really slow so they understand.
Yeah.
This is the first song on our new album. Yeah.
Right, again becomes the personality of.
And
the
they
record,
just,
you know?
they just kill it on that record.
Yeah.
They sound amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great record too. Yep. So
So
that
it
was
was-
definitely my first one.
Yeah. So was it live? You heard?
No, not really, because
Yeah.
again, I traded for half of it,
Yeah.
but and it
Oh, yeah,
was
yeah,
interesting to me. So technically, it was probably my first live
Right.
record. But if I really think about it, the first live stuff I was listening to was comedy stuff that
Yeah.
my parents had.
Yeah.
They were Columbia Records.
Wow, I
people.
didn't even think of that. That's
Yeah,
true.
same
Yeah.
here.
so they had some live comedy tapes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, especially the Johnny Carson stuff and
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But the first live music that captivated me, that made me
Yeah.
go, I bought this album. It's a live album. What is going on?
Yeah.
Why was right Exit Stage Left from
Yeah.
Rush?
Yeah.
I remember, and I have specific memories about the first real, deep dive, if you will, that I did really young with
Yeah.
that. I had it on tape. So really small pictures of everything. I
Yeah.
mean, the front cover and the back cover are nice when you see it on a record, which I
Right.
eventually got.
Yeah.
It's nice little play on all their previous records.
Yeah.
They've got a little touchstone to everyone,
Right.
so it's kind of fun. You look at
Yeah.
it while you're listening to it, and you're trying to go, "Oh, that's from Fly By Night.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
from Caress of Steel." You're picking out all the little things.
Right.
And then on that physical record, if you open it up, there's live shots of all the guys that are completely blown out. You can't see.
Right.
Alex has got.
Yeah, they're all intentionally taken in a way so you
Yeah.
can't see their
Oh
face.
yeah, you're right.
Right,
Yeah.
so
And one of
Alex
Neil
has-
is from behind.
Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah, I know.
Getty's
yeah.
lit from the front, so you
Yeah.
only see his silhouette. Alex has got his arm
Yeah,
in front
Alex
of his
picture's
face.
awesome, yeah.
So
Yeah.
so there's these. You're like, whoa, it's mysterious. What's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
And the rest of the inside of it is just red.
That's right.
That's just those three little pictures and nothing
right.
else.
Now, if you got lucky,
Yeah.
the bonus was when you slipped out the second record. You had two records in there. Oh, what's this? A little poster.
Yeah.
And you fold the
Oh,
poster
yeah.
out, and it's a big, huge, massive,
Yeah.
airplane landing lights live shot of
Right.
the band, like
Yeah.
in living color. There it is,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah.
That was a nice little special
Yeah.
treat at the
yeah,
end.
I
but
think my copy of it
has
on
the
vinyl
poster.
still has the
yeah,
poster.
that's great. So, but I had the tape.
Yeah.
And
So-
my memory of bonding with that tape to the point where I was telling everybody in the car on our trip to a summer vacation.
Yeah.
I like to, we would, a family of five, so I would, as the oldest, I got to pick where I wanted to sit.
Yeah.
And in the station wagon, what I like to do was go all the way in the way back
Yeah.
so I could lay down
Yeah.
and ride up. And with my, one speaker cassette deck and a set of headphones,
Yep.
right? So I'm in the way back, laying down. Nobody can see me with my pillow, and I've got Exit Stage Left on cassette.
Yeah.
And it's a long album. It's a
Yeah.
double album, right?
Right.
So it's going on and on and on. I couldn't believe it. And there's a song on there, just a little guitar solo called Brunsbane
Yeah, yeah.
that Alex pulls off just before they play the trees. And it
Yeah.
was kind of an improv thing.
Yeah.
And he liked to do that. I had no idea. I was
Yeah.
a fan of the band, young.
Yeah, and you're like, why is this song
I
you're
knew
playing
their
live
studio.
not even on a record?
Yeah,
Where
I
did
knew
it
their
come
studio
from?
records, and that's it. I mean, I picked up Cream magazine on the one time in 5 years they would put Rush in an article somewhere.
Right.
They've got a record out.
Yeah, yeah.
So I didn't know what this song was
Yeah.
and what was going on. And so I'm listening to it, and of course it's just quiet classical guitar solo.
Right.
So I rewind it in the car and say, hey, everybody, listen up. And everybody stops talking. And I'm blasting it through my one speaker thing. And I'm like, okay. And finished playing it. And my mom was a musician all her life. I learned a lot from her. And she's like, oh, that sounds like this and classical stuff. I mean, again,
Right.
I'm like, yeah. Guess who this is?
Yeah.
I don't know. I played this game, right? I'm like, that's Rush, the band
Yeah.
that I don't get why you guys like
Right,
that,
right.
and they're loud and noisy, and the
Yeah,
guy has
yeah.
a terrible voice. Really, so it put them on the radar as a legitimate band. I was
Right,
trying
right,
to.
right.
I'm 12 years old, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to legitimize my taste with my
Yeah, of
parents
course.
because that's what you do.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not rebelling against them yet.
Yeah.
Maybe you're still trying to. And she paid attention. She said, "Well, that's interesting,"
Yeah.
And she was not a fan of the band ever,
Right. Yeah.
but certainly could acknowledge and knew more than she wanted to.
Right.
I'm sure if she was around now, I didn't want to know anywhere near. Brian and I have many anecdotes of hanging out,
Yeah.
watching videos and
Oh,
playing
yeah.
songs, and my mom coming in and being able to reference
Yeah.
the album, what was going on,
Nice.
what kind of shoes they were wearing,
Right.
ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, she famously came in when we got a bad VHS bootleg of the Don Kirshner rock concert. And of course,
That
if
was
you
like
get-
what? That was a tape they did in '75.
Yeah, and it's like 3 days after Neil joined the
Right.
band, and
Yeah.
it's really raw.
Yeah.
And Getty's got these just ridiculous sideburns, and they've got the platform shoes. It's really out of control. and she came in to tell us something. She was on her way out the door, and she she came in and she goes, "Okay, listen, you guys, I left the meatloaf on the stove. I'm taking off. You guys can eat it." Is that Getty?
Right.
It stopped in the middle of her sentence and went, "Oh, is that Getty?" And we're like, "Yeah, it is."
Nice.
Yeah. So what was yours?
I think it might have been Budokan. That might have been like the first one I remember as like hearing as a live record.
Yeah.
Because that would have been like 77, 78. I was like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because the Kiss, I just listened to their studio records.
Right.
I think my brother had a live, but I think at the time I was probably like, oh, I don't want to hear a live. I don't know what. And then a live 2 came out.
Yep.
And that had the fight.
Gatefold,
and that was the show.
man, yeah.
That was the show that
The
we saw.
Cats, right?
Yeah.
And
Right. So
Drum
now
Riser
you're
and-
bonding with that.
Yeah,
Certainly.
yeah.
Right.
And, that,
yeah.
and then like Gene Simmons, like
Oh,
all
that
the blood
picture.
and
That's one of the best
full-
photos of Gene
Yeah.
ever, right there. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's an iconic rock and roll.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
even go beyond, you
Yeah.
know, the band and say that's a rock.
Yeah, and that
famous
album
rock photo.
sounds like shit too. Like when you listen to that one now, Alive 2, it's just
Yeah,
It-
I mean,
it-
it's kind of like I said, it. Part of the problem is that it has to follow the other live record,
Right,
so
yeah.
it's going to be, you know what I mean. And that record
You
is
can't
so
help
famous.
yourself but rate it once
Yeah.
it gets,
Exactly.
even though it's not
Right.
fair. You go, well, Exit Stage Left isn't
Yeah.
Rush's All the World's
Yeah.
a Stage. Well, you know, Kiss Alive 2 is
Yeah.
never going to be Kiss
Right.
Alive. Right?
Another pretty early one for me, I wouldn't say it was one of my favorites, but it was a pretty early on that I had it, was the live Aussie record there.
the one with all the Sabbath songs.
The one with
Tribute,
no, not tribute. The one where
Brad Gillis.
he's on the front like spitting out the jelly.
Yeah, that's
It's supposed to be blood.
Yeah, they do all the.
Yeah, and they
Sabbath
do all the
songs.
Sabbath
Yeah,
tunes.
Yeah.
And that one freaked me out because at the time that I came across that, the girl that lived next to me had it.
Yeah.
I didn't know who Ozzy was. I didn't know what Black Sabbath was.
Yeah.
But you know, open it up and see those pictures of where they were hanging the dwarf
Yeah,
and all
the-
that shit,
yeah.
and it was so eerie and weird that I was
Yeah.
fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Ironically, probably trying to take Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2 up another notch.
And I was
Right.
like,
Say
why are they-
the live record as a shocking document?
Yeah.
You know,
and
right?
and at the time I didn't really put it together 2 and 2 about the idea of it being I was only a kid, so a show.
Right.
So you're like, what is the significance of hanging somebody on
Right.
stage, a dwarf with the
Yeah.
paint on his face? What is going?
Right.
Oh my God, it was
Yeah.
so eerie. And then at no point in any of the lyrics or anything is that part of what's going on.
Right.
You have no idea.
No, they,
Yeah. I don't even think. The funny thing is, though, I don't think he was even part of that, because that was like they did like a one-off, like 3 nights or something at at a club at the Ritz in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and it was after the Diary tour, after
Right.
Randy died, and they had Brad Gillis from Night Ranger.
Oh,
was the
yeah,
guitar
yeah.
Player. But when they had that the dwarf, his name was
Ronnie, right?
which was like a
I think it was a thing
no,
about
it's
Dio
yeah,
taking
it was about
his.
Dio, and they would hang him during Goodbye to Romance every night.
Yep.
At the show, but he was like Ozzy's
Very just
Like-
strange, and they
yeah, it was a weird. But then and that picture inside had him with the guy, but I don't think he was. Just the whole, and then it had all those runes.
around the outside,
yeah,
and
that you read.
even as a child, you were obviously like that. He's spitting out a mouthful of
Right, yeah, it
raspberry
looked
jelly.
Like jelly. Yeah.
I mean, the marketing folks and the artwork folks at record companies all through the years have had their ups and downs, but
Sure.
definitely the 70s into the early 80s, they had it down.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
They knew exactly who their customer
Oh, yeah.
was.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Every Kiss record that, I mean, there's plenty of Kiss records that are, if you just judged it on the music
Right.
alone, pretty tepid.
Yeah, yeah.
And some stuff that was pretty, not
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But it was the whole marketing package,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the vision of all of it that was absolutely, you had to attain it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember feeling that way about
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff. Again, you started to talk about Ozzy and that album, and that it disturbed you. You're young.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
The marketing is working perfectly because you're
Of course,
you're
yeah.
completely entranced
And
by it, and you want to find out more, even if you're afraid,
Yeah.
right? Like with a horror
Yeah, it's
movie
kind
or
of
something
a
like that.
fear fascination
Yeah,
thing,
absolutely.
you know,
Like, I have to know.
That's how Sabbath felt to me as a kid.
Yeah.
In general, their whole vibe was like just
Yeah,
weird and.
I mean, there was
creepy.
certainly
I almost didn't want to.
Yeah.
know
yeah,
what's
yeah,
going on.
and
Right.
and you know, with the Kiss stuff too, it just like I didn't get it. I didn't understand why they had the costumes and
Right.
what was the, To me, as a kid, I remember thinking with like Kiss or Ozzy, with all that stuff, that when it would become theatrical, that in my mind I couldn't understand how, after poring over the lyrics and the art and all this for years, that none of this stuff was ever explained. Like, how are you guys gonna how are you guys gonna go out on stage in these costumes and at no point address that you're in costumes, or why, or what is the significance of the characters, or and as a kid, that mystery was a big deal to me. Like, I remember feeling distinctly like if you studied it hard enough and long enough, you would figure it out. And then of course you do, but you just figure out that it's a show.
And those things didn't when you get older, you realize like, oh, these guys are dressed like this, and all the songs are about fucking, except God of Thunder and I Love Rock or whatever. But then, like, I discovered Iron Maiden, where they had all this cool artwork, and all the songs were like Phantom of the Opera.
And they were a little more. I want to say the songs themselves and the lyrical content was a little more like sophisticated. It wasn't just and like, that was the thing to me with Kiss as a kid, was I didn't get the. I didn't get the connection between what they looked like and what the music didn't reflect that. But I'll tell you that the mystery of it sold me a bunch of records and made me interested. And to this day, you guys both know I'm a massive Ace Frehley fan to this day. And a lot of times with a band, the mystery of something, and that's a lot of times why I don't like certain things too. Like the Beatles, one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan is all the mystery is beaten out of it. There's nothing about it that everybody doesn't know, and
it's too saturated. It's too known. So you'd have to find some other way in. But to talk about Iron Maiden, to go back to that for a second, kind of like an elevation of Kiss. Like, Kiss is this very, again, as an adult looking back, very simple construct of just shock and awe, and it works. And you're like, and you either like it or you don't. You're afraid of it. You can still like it. You love it. You still like it, but it's shock and awe. And then Iron Maiden, a little more sophisticated shock and awe. Certainly shock and awe. But we're going to take it this way, and at a certain point, we're taking it too far for some people, where we're starting to give you history lessons, So, I still amuse people, watching Jeopardy or something like that, and then I'll have a question about Alexander the Great, and they'll say, in what century? I'm like, 300 BC. And like, how do you know that? I'm like, well, because in Alexander the Great, the lyrics are at the Aegean Sea in 334 BC, right? I know who conquered. I know where he went because of that song. And like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, I'm telling you, the honest reason why I know that is not from remembering from history class. It's because of Somewhere in Time on tape.
Walkman.
That's right.
On the way to school every day for
that's exactly why I know it. So again, the shock and awe had now become ridiculously over sophisticated, and you're like, are we losing people? I don't know. But that was fun for me. Again, growing up, I'm listening to that at 16.
I know.
So now I'm ready for something beyond Kiss. Kiss, I'm like, it's starting to wane. It's not, the shock and awe isn't shocking or awing me anymore. It's now almost taking on nostalgia, right? But here, Iron Maiden, what's this? Look at this character, and the character is on all the album covers, and it's not the band. It's a separate thing.
It's a thing.
It's an identity of the band. The band's like, we make music and we sing songs, and this guy's here to kind of carry this whole storyline along. You're like, well, this is much more complicated. I need to get out a notebook and start drawing these drawings and connecting these songs and making mixtapes of it. So again, the sophisticated shock and awe to take you into those teen years, and some of that stuff. For me, I guess maybe I'm either still a teenager or it held up well. But the Maiden to this day, I'm like, some of that is still wonderful to listen to. It still blows my mind.
It's weird for me to think about me as like a 7-year-old kid listening to Christine 16, like, which is fucking song. Like, I'm a little boy listening to like a song like with a grown man talking about
Plastercaster. I had no idea what that meant. If you want to see my love, just ask her, right?
Love Gun.
Right? I can imagine my parents upstairs listening to us playing the record, because we would learn the songs, right? I'm sure you guys did. And then back them up and then sing them as loud as we could to each other, dressed up or whatever. And as soon as I got a drum set, playing along and even louder, right? here we are singing the Christine 16. I could see my dad upstairs at a table. I wish I could have, smoking a cigarette and shaking his head, going, "What are they? What is this?"
Like when I saw you coming out of the school that day, I just got to have you. I'm like,
I've
when you
got
listen
to
to that
have
now
you.
as
I know.
an adult, you're like, Jesus,
Right.
dude.
He gets so,
That's
I've
a
got to
little
have
creepy.
you, right?
Yeah, right. Yep.
Couldn't have cared less when I was 8 years old.
Yeah,
It was
it's
just
funny how
cool.
that didn't.
Yeah, it didn't.
That
like,
wasn't
there's
part
no-
of what
there's
I
no
was interested in
context
about
there.
it. You know, but
Yeah. But I think the first one I actually fell in love with as a live record was Exit Stage Left. Was
Yeah.
like, when that was my introduction to Rush in general. So
yeah, and that's a
it was-
terrific live record too.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
it flows really well, and you know,
It's odd that it does too, because it's
Yeah.
taken from so many different shows.
Yeah, so many.
right.
And there's been, work done on those, like
Yeah.
we've been
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
before.
But it sounds
But
like
it-
one cohesive.
But
show.
boy,
Yeah,
I tell you,
it
Terry
really
Brown, their longtime
Awesome.
producer back in
Yeah.
the day, did a great job of let's make a live document.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work
Yeah.
to make those different shows from different years,
Yeah.
different tours,
Yeah.
all kind of sing together as
Right.
one thing. And it
Yeah.
did. How many times did we play that? Over
Thousands of
Yeah.
times, I'm sure we've heard.
Right,
it.
and we had it.
Yeah.
He had the vinyl,
Yeah.
so that meant I didn't have to look at my little
Yeah.
tiny tape anymore.
Yeah.
We got to pour over the record,
Yeah.
even though we'd seen it
Yeah.
and figured it out, and then just flip those records over. One,
yeah.
2, 3, 4.
And then,
1, 2,
interestingly
3, 4,
enough,
over and over.
yeah.
Back then,
So
you know,
great.
Every little nuance of the crowd, like
we were
any
couldn't-
little roar. Yeah.
and
yeah.
the pause,
Yeah.
ironically, the pause between flipping it over
Yeah.
to chat with each other, because we wouldn't say a word.
Yeah.
We would sit and draw
Yeah.
and listen to side one for 22 minutes.
Right.
Then it would go, and hit
Yeah.
hit the run out groove, and we go, dude, that was not great. And we talk about stuff, and then flip it over, silence again,
Yeah, of course,
drawing
yeah.
until the third side, right?
Yeah.
So we had these little breaks in
this
between.
is a song about a car. This
Yeah.
is called Red Barchetta.
Right. We know the banter, right? It's part of the album.
Interestingly enough, too, with that one, I got double bang for the buck on that because I became obsessed with the record. When I was a kid, we were not especially well off, put it that way,
Yeah.
and I never had cable TV until
Yeah.
I was in high school.
Okay.
But I remember very, very distinctly that some people my parents knew got MTV, got cable, right?
Yeah.
And they let me go to their house at night
Yeah.
and watch Exit Stage Left because they played
nice.
the concert on
Yeah.
and I had heard about it
Yeah.
and said, oh, do you think they'll let me? And my parents had called them up and they said, yeah.
Right.
And so seeing it, the first time I saw it,
Right.
I already knew the record very
Yeah, yeah.
intimately.
Right.
So it was crazy to be able to physically see it.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So,
yeah, of course.
and that one nowadays, I find it's terribly dark.
Exit Stage Left?
Yeah, the video component of it, it's really hard to see, and I don't know if that
Yeah,
was
I have
intentionally the way they wanted it to be, but
Yeah.
I have one of the more fairly recent, reissues of that on DVD, and they
Yeah.
did the best they could with
Yeah.
it. But that's part of its, I wouldn't even call it charm,
or-
but that's
right.
what it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's that it was always a frustrating when we first got it on video cassette, right?
Yeah.
We eventually became such diehards we had to have it.
Yeah.
When we first got it on video cassette, Brian had it,
Yeah.
and I think your dad had at that point, or very shortly. No, maybe that was Grace Under Pressure. That video, boy, that's a great video.
yeah.
Remember your
the
dad
Grace
had
and the
that
Pressure show.
gigantic, old school, big screen TV.
Yeah, that projection TV.
So we would watch it on that
Yeah.
because it was like being in a movie theater.
Was that the one that was like a mini video or something? Was it, or didn't they do like one Rush one? It was like a
no, it was
a
just
fine-
it was called Grace Under Pressure Live,
It
and it
was
was a
just the whole-
VHS tape. But what was interesting about it was until much later,
Yeah.
they never made it available as just a record or a tape,
Right.
or so
Right.
it was only
The
as
only way
the
to
video.
hear those songs live from that
Right.
tour was on that video
yeah,
cassette.
it's in the other room actually.
Yeah, but
I still
wa-
have that copy of
Yeah,
it.
watching Exit Stage Left on VHS,
Yeah.
one of our most, because it's kind of shot like a little mini documentary.
Yeah.
So they've got the band members talking about it in between, and they've got
Yeah.
their own music as incidental music.
Right.
So they're playing the Camera Eye, which is this,
Right.
the giant, longest song on Moving Pictures,
Yeah.
a song that Brian and I obsessed about the minute we heard it,
Yeah.
and had been dying to see it live.
Yeah.
And of course, by the time we were old enough to go to shows, they had abandoned
Right.
that song from their live set.
Yeah.
to be brought back later, and we gladly saw it.
To good effect.
But at that point, it was gone. So in that video, they're playing the intro.
Yeah.
That staccato military drum beat while Neil's talking over it. And they're showing this video, and they're showing the band setting up. They're showing the crew bringing the road cases, and it's just building. Again, as somebody, we hadn't seen Rush yet.
Yeah.
It's so exciting, as a fan.
And then the way that slow-mo shot of the lights coming up and the crowd standing up when it bang.
They time it to the intro of the camera eye, and it just has that
perfect.
And it just
crazy.
Right, the lights go up, and you're like, oh man, I can't wait for this video. And you're looking at the back of it, and you're like, where's the camera eye? Right. Oh, maybe they just left it off the credit. Right. It's certainly going to be on here.
That was one that the fans
Nope.
complained about for decades. Like bring it back, and then they
you know what?
did,
I'm sure it's not scientific, but I bet if you polled enough old school Rush fans, you'd find out. You know what really made me want that song was that stupid Exit Stage Left video where they use it but don't use it.
To this day, as a matter of fact, it wasn't very recently, but I don't know, 6 months ago or something. I watched it.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen it now in a while, but and I remember watching it, and that part of it when the lights come up and all that, it still makes the hair stand up on my neck. Like
it's such an early memory of that band.
It's brilliant. Yeah,
right. It's before cell phones, before the internet, before we'd ever even been in a room with a band.
Yeah. And I remember how
it's really visceral. That
it's also crazy how sparse the production, not sound wise, but the production of putting on the show itself is.
Yeah. Right.
It's three guys, and at that point, I mean, the movie screen at that point to see it, I remember going, "Oh my God, it's like a drive-in screen, right?" But you watch it now, and it's little. I mean, compared to what their shows later became, there's not a lot going on.
It's about as rudimentary. I mean, if you tried to do a show like that now, it would be. You'd be doing it with full irony and tact. Oh, look, they're broadcasting pole position behind them while they play it. Again, that's with two red lights down on the floor. That's all they got.
Yeah, so that one's definitely seminal. I mean, it's an important record.
Definitely.
For sure. I mean, it's My Frampton Comes Alive, it's sort of thing.
Right.
I guess.
Which I've never heard.
Oh, really?
Never heard that record. I mean, I know the single that they used to play with the talk box. Everybody knows that song.
Yeah. And you've probably heard more of it than you think you have.
Probably, yeah.
Because a lot of what you hear when you hear any Frampton on the radio is from it.
I'm going to sidetrack again. There's no official live Boston record, is there?
No.
No.
Isn't that insane?
Right.
In thinking about talking about live records, we mentioned it amongst ourselves a couple days ago, and I thought about it, and then I was like, I don't really have anything to talk about. Oh, I got a bunch to talk about.
Right.
But it also got me on that track, which is like, what bands don't have bands that either I love or that I think should have a live document that don't. I mean, Boston was such a crazy
and
studio band, but also distinguished themselves live for absolute sure. If you look at YouTube and see any
there's that live Meadowlands or some of the outdoor stadium.
Right, there's some fantastic
well, like
stuff.
he said, there's
how do they not have an official document about that?
Why is there why before the reunion is there no official Van Halen live album with David Lee Roth?
Now that I can answer.
Because I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Because a good friend of mine back in the day, he was the Van Halen fan to my Rush fan. Now he was a big Rush fan too, but we went off in a couple different directions. He liked a lot of the same. He liked Genesis, he liked Rush, he liked Marillion, but he liked Van Halen in the same way, and I didn't. I only knew a couple things. I liked a couple songs that weren't Jump off of 1984.
Right.
And I also liked Van Halen too, but that's a separate podcast.
Yeah.
Because I really would like to center a podcast around that particular album.
I could do.
Easily.
And I know that we could. So I'll table that.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, that's all I knew.
Yeah.
Minus the hits.
Yeah.
He was hardcore into everything.
Yeah.
Had every bootleg, every video.
Right.
He had bootleg cassettes full of songs that were originals that Eddie had written or Alex had written with him, Michael Anthony had written, that they never put on a record.
Yeah.
He had dozens of them.
Deep.
Yeah. So he had all these songs that he had complete albums full of songs. I've never heard of any of this.
Right.
But he had lots of live stuff and lots of the stuff that they did very famously and infamously in LA.
Yeah.
Where they played these like at the whiskey,
right?
Yeah.
Early stuff,
and
really
backyard parties.
Yeah, and he had some terrible sounding tapes, but he also had some that were.
Really good.
We're talking about this is the late '80s.
Yeah.
that were like studio quality.
Right. Yeah.
Because he spared no expense. That's how big of a fan he was. Okay, so we're sitting in his car, we're driving around, we're listening to the live. The best of the live tapes that he had, best sound quality, were an absolute train wreck.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Live,
The band was so. I guess if you've ever seen any video of early stuff, you get the flavor.
Yeah.
David Lee Roth is literally running all over the
Right.
place.
Yeah. So he's breathless. And,
Eddie is literally got his guitar taped to a strap so he can whip it around his head. He's
Do all
throwing
that
it
shit,
across to Michael Anthony's laying on his back with a microphone stand down on the floor, singing into it perfectly, by the way.
Yeah.
Perfect background vocals.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is
It's a
just
mess,
chaos from go to no,
Yeah.
right? So the first song is like Running with the Devil, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, running, wow!
Right.
And then there's nothing else intelligible.
Yeah, exactly.
And the sound is great,
Right.
but all you can hear is the drums
Yeah.
like double time speed, and then this wow, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's thank you.
But
Next
I mean,
song.
that's
So-
right. But I mean, by the time we get to like say 1984,
Yeah.
they're playing giant places. You're telling
Yeah.
me
Oh,
that
sure.
at no point did they take any soundboard recordings and decide we should put out a live record?
Yeah,
That's
there's
crazy
that
to me.
that I don't know.
There's like
I'm just
Live
saying
Without
that,
a
right.
Net with Sammy Hagar.
Right. What I'm saying is my experience of listening to the early stuff live, it was hilarious
Right.
in a good way.
Sure.
It was just chaos. So
Right.
any record company, now even if the band had said, let's put this out, it's nuts.
Yeah.
The record company, how do we market this? This is, he's swearing on this one.
Right.
He's not
Yeah,
even
yeah.
singing the lyrics here.
Right.
Here he's just going, oh,
Right.
he's just moaning
Right.
through this. How do we put any of this out?
Yeah.
I bet you they couldn't.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe,
even
yeah.
if the band was into it, they'd be like, "This is too raw.
Right.
Come to the show and check it out.
Right.
We're not selling it to you. You
And
got
the
to
one
come
they
to the
did
show."
do after the reunion is pretty raw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Tokyo Dome show is pretty,
I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah,
again.
the-
you know, and it's funny because I really enjoyed it. And everybody was just endlessly talking about how David Lee Roth can't sing anymore. And I was like, he couldn't really sing to begin with.
Right.
And when I say that,
Yeah.
you know, I know there's a lot of people who would take exception to that.
Right.
David Lee Roth, for me, was never a fantastic singer, but he's a fucking fantastic frontman.
Yeah.
And those guys, there's a lot of the punk thing in the live Van Halen show that isn't reflected in their music.
That's right. Right.
And I was like, if you've ever heard any bootlegs or anything of Van Halen, you would know that actually this is maybe some of the best shit he's ever done live because he's actually singing the songs.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
people are all, he doesn't sound like he used to. And it's like, well, first of all, we're talking decades of going.
Right. Yeah.
I thought when I listened to it, I was, put it this way, I was way more bummed out by the fact that Michael Anthony didn't
Right.
play than I
Yeah.
was that Dave
Yeah.
didn't sound great.
Yeah.
I thought he sounded fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the band sounded great, you know, and it was a recorded document of them live with that group, which makes it even more of a shame that Michael Anthony is not involved.
Yeah. We couldn't have just capped that right,
Right.
there with
Just one.
original
Right.
four guys,
Yeah.
and we're moving on.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's obviously a running theme with a lot of these bands. Like Black Sabbath, what a travesty that Bill Ward didn't play at the end. And
Yeah.
come on.
I know it can't always come together, but you're like in your
Right.
mind, you're like, of course it can, but
Yeah. Yeah.
not always.
So what else do you have on your?
I wrote down a couple of albums because I really, again, we keep bringing this up. I didn't think that there were any essential albums that
Right.
were live albums. So, like, well, there's plenty of live albums that I like,
Right.
that I really like.
Yeah.
You know, Rush's first live album, All the World's a Stage, is an album I really like.
Yeah.
I don't go to it a lot anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did back in the day because their studio albums were so fussed over, even in the beginning.
Oh,
and that's usually a good thing. I had no idea how raw they were. And
It
even
just sounds like that. You can
there's
tell
a
how loud.
there's a
and, like,
grittiness
it's
and,
so
and,
punk.
and a hardness,
Yeah.
an aggressiveness that just got tuned right out of some
Yeah.
of those early albums. Sometimes to good effect by the time
Right.
they got to Farewell to Kings, but
Right.
the early stuff I think took some hits.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Caress of Steel could have been a 2112,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was the album after that.
Right.
That was their third album. I think that could have been
Yeah.
a 2112 like album with the right production and
Yeah.
emphasis. I think Fly By Night could have been an album. That was their second album, their first with Neil Peart on the drums, right? That could have been a huge
Yeah.
hard rock record
Yeah.
with just, Terry Brown was just in his 20s. He's the producer of
Yeah.
those early records. just like those guys were. So he was still learning, and they sound wonderful and amazing.
I always feel like
But they
Caress of Steel was too rock and roll for the prog guys that wanted a concept record.
Yeah.
And it's too proggy for the rock and roll guys.
Yeah.
It's kind of like on this weird fence. And
Yeah.
it's one of my favorites, and it always has
mine
been.
too.
I think it's incredible.
It's absolutely the bluesiest record
Yeah,
that they ever
out of the
did.
first three, that's my
Oh,
favorite.
right, and I think a lot of Rush fans feel that way.
Yeah.
That's it's a nice kind of dark corner album.
Yeah,
You're like,
and-
they're still really early. They're still
Yeah.
having a good time with some stuff, but man, it gets really crazy on side two.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
yeah.
starts to take
Awesome.
off, and,
Yeah.
for young guys
No one at the bridge.
doing stuff
know.
like that,
Yeah.
some of the chord changes and what
That's-
they were doing, it's
Yeah.
pretty intense stuff, and it's fun. But
Yeah, that's the one thing about, like, we talk about, like, we've talked about before, is like discovering these bands and going backwards. But
right,
I always like not wish, but like imagine being a Rush kid and that, like, that first one. It's like, oh, this is pretty cool, and then you're along for that whole
The whole ride.
like,
Right.
you know. And there is bands like that for us that we
Sure.
you know,
absolutely.
that's
It
the one
started
we were-
started with Day One,
right,
and
right,
put out a
and
record,
keep
and
going.
Yeah.
been
So-
with them ever since,
Yeah.
or some that picked up in the middle, and still it's been a long
Right,
time.
right, yeah.
People,
Yeah.
that are young are like, you went to see them
Right.
10 years before I
Yeah.
was born.
I know, right.
I'm like, yeah, and I was already late to the game by 10 years.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
I'm still a new guy at the
Right.
show.
Yeah.
I bump into people and they've got
Right.
Hemispheres tour T-shirts on.
I
Remember
know.
that?
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
we go to shows, right?
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that guy's got a Farewell to King shirt.
Right, but
And that was way back before the day where any band's merchandising, you can go on to some band's website right now. You can go buy a T-shirt from Judas Priest with the first album cover.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Back in the day, if you had a
you
Hemisphere
wouldn't.
shirt, you were
had
at
to
the
because
show.
you were at the
Period.
show.
you were at the show,
Right.
Or you knew somebody and you
Yeah.
bought it from them. There
Yeah.
was really no other way
Yeah.
to get that.
And
If
so you were
went
like,
to
oh, old school.
If you went to like the T-shirt like iron-on place or whatever,
Right.
you'd get a Rush shirt that says Rush.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
just
every-
the logo or
And,
whatever.
and every fan knew where you got it too,
Yeah.
and that was okay. You were
Yeah,
representing, but that wasn't a tour T-shirt.
No.
Yeah, it was a different thing.
Yeah, anything with dates on the back, and
Right.
I would just go week at the beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, how did he get that?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I was 18 in 1976, so I saw the 2112 tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when we first started seeing Rush live, like in '84, '85, right? We were still seeing people with second and third album
79,
tour shirts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 2112 tour shirts, and guys that had been
Yeah.
with the band for at that
Yeah.
point just 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're walking around
weird
at
to think about
the
that, right?
concert hall, and it's great. You're like,
Yeah.
that was a shirt from that tour,
Yeah.
and that was a guy who was 16, 17, 18 when that tour.
And then
was.
later-
and now he's 28,
Yeah.
which is very young, right? And we're hanging out with these 14-year-old guys like us. We're going, dude, that shirt's great, and he's like, isn't it great though, man? They were awesome back
Right.
then.
Yeah, and ended up happening to me where some kid would come up to me at a Rush show
Yeah.
and be like, "No, you didn't see Power Windows," and I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you bought that at a show? Yeah,
Right.
yeah."
I have this really.
So you end up being that guy eventually, yeah.
if you stick around long enough,
Yeah.
I in '85, Rush was really at the height of their merchandising.
Yeah.
They had like 40 shirts on that
Yeah.
tour.
Right.
And in one of the styles in the '80s, I mean, was those big 4XL shirts.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I bought a
oversized.
big 4XL shirt that
Yeah.
just had the kid with the
the
binoculars,
binoculars,
right? It looked like Stuart Copeland, just
Yeah.
looking out
Yeah.
with Rush at the top. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was giant and white and just had that kid on
Yeah.
it, right? And of course, I didn't wear it. I
Right.
wore it once, and it was like a dress.
Dress, yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm not wearing this. And all these years later, of course, I still have it, of
Yeah.
course. I think it might have been Snakes and Arrows tour, so 2002,
Yeah.
or maybe R30 2004.
Yeah.
One of the Rush tours. It fit because
Yeah.
it was a 4XL back then.
Right.
It didn't fit great,
Right.
but enough so that I could put it on
Yeah.
and be that guy at the show finally. And people were flipping out because
Right.
A, it was a rare shirt
Right.
even back then. Nobody bought it.
Right.
And B, that's so old, man. It's
Yeah.
2004. 85? Were you at that show? I'm like, how old were you? 15? I'm like,
know.
exactly.
Yeah.
I had a
Yeah, it was fun to be that guy.
Oh, yeah,
you
of
know?
course.
I had a Depeche Mode T-shirt like that from a show from the 80s, from
Right,
like
yeah.
86
Something
or
really
something.
old, right.
And that was like the thing was like the oversized, the giant
Those
shirts.
big
Yeah.
blouse shirts,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Frankie say relax.
Yeah, Frankie
Yeah. My
says
brother
I'm the
was big into
homeless.
them.
Right. Yeah. So that big giant T-shirt, Culture Club had 'em, everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd say if we're talking about albums that are live that are essential
Yeah.
to me, the earliest one, and I don't mean by exposure, but I mean by earliest, is like date when it came out.
Yeah.
Is Jazz at Oberlin by the Dave Brubeck Quartet.
Okay.
That's 1953, long before my time.
Yeah.
But when I was getting into jazz, Dave Brubeck kept coming up. Just about everybody knows Take Five, whether they know it or not. They know it.
Yeah, plus we were growing up being drummers.
Yeah.
Joe Morello immediately, you were like,
heard of him, didn't care.
Yeah.
But it kept bumping into me. And you know, as I was skirting around jazz and I started with fusion with jazz.
Oh, nice.
So I really wasn't into the stuff from the 30s, 40s, 50s until way later.
Yeah.
It was all 70s and 80s stuff because it was marrying up with what I liked in rock music at the time. So every time I heard Jean-Luc Ponty or Weather Report or Kazumi Watanabe, I'm like, this is like prog music, just without the vocals, right? This is like Genesis. And then I started seeing, the guy that plays live with Genesis is on this Jean-Luc Ponty record. And the guy that does this is and so forth, right? Yeah. But eventually, those seeds drift back. If you stay interested long enough, you're like, why do I keep hearing about this Dave Brubeck guy?
Yeah.
And that Jazz at Oberlin record had to be, if it wasn't the first, it's one of the first records that I got by him. And I became a fan right away. Yeah. And that record, like we were talking about earlier, has that, it was recorded at a college. Yeah. And a bunch of young hipsters were there to check out the jazz.
Right.
And Dave was doing something, I didn't know this when I bought it, but Dave and the band were doing something new
at that time
in jazz. They were getting away from bebop and they were improvising a lot.
Yeah.
And it was new and fresh and it was this West Coast thing. So you think about young college kids digging, jazz today. Of course they do, but not in this way. It was much more concentrated. So here's this gig that they're going to play at this college. And again, we're talking about maybe one or two mics, I'm sure, at the time. And it's just got that room feel. You can feel this almost like a gymnasium because you can hear people in the sound field when you listen to it way in the back. You can tell something interesting is going on, like somebody's ripping off a solo that must look really intense, because you'll hear people all of a sudden 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time in the audience go, whoa, wow, snapping their fingers and stuff, just getting really excited.
Awesome.
As a solo or preempting the end of a solo. Somebody sounds like it's coming to a place in the song where in your brain you're thinking, and then they would go right? And they're going there, but they're not done, so they preempt the clap and then they stop because they realize they
that's
There's
awesome.
a lot of that give and take with the audience, and the audience is very vocal, and you can hear people say things like, yeah, right on. They're getting so into it, and that's, for me, I didn't pick up the record because it was live. It was probably cheap, and I liked the monochrome album cover.
Right.
But after hearing it one time, I went right back and played it again. I'm like, that was
I mean, awesome.
I was probably in my 20s when I heard it, and it was blowing my mind. I mean, I knew what live records were.
Right.
I knew what jazz bands were, but I'd never heard anything
like that.
That intimate.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I mean, All the World's a Stage, the first Rush live album, isn't very intimate. It is kind of.
Yeah.
But it's raw and abrasive, right? I was listening to rock music live.
Sure.
So this was the first record that's felt almost smaller in a club, and you could hear individuals going, "That's awesome." They were saying the same thing.
I love Brubeck
feeling.
and obviously Joe Morello too. I'm gonna have to hear it. I've never heard that.
Yeah,
it sounds amazing. Yeah.
If I was going to say there's
For
one
essential
Brubeck album that anybody should have, if you just even remotely like jazz, that's the one, and you could be done.
Yeah.
If you never listen to anything else, you'll be sorrier for it.
Yeah.
But you'll have gotten the best.
Yeah,
that's the one to dig into. And it's I've got, of course, because that's the way I am, I've got dozens of other Brubeck records and lots of live stuff too. Chasing that live taste, right? Of that first record, you go, well, he's got 17 live records. I got to check those out.
Yeah, I mean,
and then one by one, as I talked about earlier, there's one that's recorded and there's a mic that's too close to his mouth, and so he's humming along tunelessly, and I'm like, I'm kind of out of this one, and that goes into the forget about it bit, or a live one where the song selection isn't really good, or they There's the only other essential Dave Brubeck isn't an album, it's a video that they did in Germany, and they do a song called 40 Days, which is on one of his later albums after Take 5.
Okay.
So maybe into the late 50s, early 60s, but a song called 40 Days. I've tracked it down on the record, the studio version, it's fine. But the live version that they did in Germany it's one of those transcendent moments. You can't talk about it. You just have to either experience it or you don't. It's so good. And there's a solo that Dave takes the song down as a piano player. It's one riff over and over again. It's complicated.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes into play, and you can sing it along in your head. And once the band has established it, you get the song, and that's the whole song.
Yeah.
But they stretch it out to like 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
And Desmond takes a sax solo, and of course he's beyond reproach. The guy's got a ridiculous tone. But when Dave gets to his piano solo, he takes the song down and down and down. It's one of those classic, loud, quiet, right?
Yeah.
In the 1950s, long before Nirvana got to it, or any other band ever got to loud, quiet, or Smashing Pumpkins got involved,
Pixies,
right? Dave bringing it down and down and down, and the song's getting quieter and quieter. We're still doing the motif, and he's soloing, and then literally out of nowhere, it becomes uncomfortable. He starts bashing the piano with these block chords that are dissonant, that don't make any sense.
Angular
and he's going, and the band's just kind of humming along in the background, going just bubbling, and he's just, and you're like, what is going? It's almost funny.
Yeah.
And almost, is he having a nervous breakdown?
Right. He's taking it to a place he
Are they
going to
go, excuse me, right? Is the German folks filming this are going to go, excuse, we have to stop the take now because you are having problems with the computer. You do not like the piano?
Right.
It is broken now? I mean, he's literally breaking and it's just, it's not making any musical sense.
Right.
And he's just going at it with this dissonance all off time. And of course he's got an idea, but you don't know that. The first time I watched it, I'm along for the ride. And then he finally brings it into this solo where it's all chords.
Yeah.
There's no single lines, there's no monophonic runs, nothing. It's just an entire cascade of chord on chord on chord on chord, and it's fast. You couldn't believe that anybody could play chords on it. If you ever tried to play a piano and you're not a piano player, it's really hard to press down on a weighted key piano and make a chord with 3, 4, 5 fingers. And he's running this whole entire cascade, is the best way I can describe it, of chords and chords on top of each other as the song builds at the end of the solo. So he takes this smashing, I've deconstructed these chords for you, I've smashed it to the ground, I've presented them as blocks. And now I'm going to build something right from these blocks. Watch
that's
this.
awesome.
And he builds it in front of you. And it's not a wall, it's a castle.
Right.
Like right in front of you in like 15 seconds. You're like, okay, I'm out. I will never see anybody, any musician play anything like that. Then that's that transcendent moment in music when you see something like that. Like, okay, I'll never see that again. That's nobody can do that.
And the same exact piece of music would not have the same impact if it had been a studio recording.
Right. I had to see it.
There's something
that was part of it.
Exactly. And that's where the live part of it comes into play sometimes, where it changes. Your perception of what's happening is different.
What about you, Brian, for an essential?
Absolutely essential. Record? This is probably a weird one to people. It's a Sammy Davis Jr. live album. It's called That's All.
Yep.
And 2-album set. It's at recorded at the Sands Hotel in Vegas.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely mental. It's like from go. It covers so much ground that it has every single thing that you want it to have in it. From incredible musicianship, the band is ridiculous. To one of the things about Sammy Davis Jr. that always was a big deal to me was that it seemed like there was no artistic talent that this dude didn't have. Yeah, he can sing, he can act, he can do comedy, he can dance, he can play 5 instruments. And he does that throughout the course of the show. And he's so on point. Like, his voice is so good. His interaction with the crowd, the banter, is almost better than the music, the things that he says, the things that he comes up with. At one point, one of my favorite parts of the record is that Frank Sinatra is in attendance at the show. He's there. And he says, I think everybody's aware that there's somebody here that needs to be introduced, and I don't think there's any point in pretending he's not here, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And he's one of my best friends in the world, Tom Mix, who probably people won't know is a old, like, silent era movie cowboy. And of course the crowd laughs, and he goes, "No, I'm kidding, you know." And he's like, "It's Frank Sinatra." And crowd goes bananas. And Sammy, hey, come on, take it easy. You want to know the truth? Without Dean, he's nothing. And from the crowd, you hear Frank. He goes, "You're through," and it's incredible.
Right.
And he's like,
it's like us going to see
exactly,
you know,
and you're through, kid.
Right, and they're busting each other's chops.
They're busting balls the whole
Right,
time,
right,
and that's amazing. And then later in the show, he introduces, you know, apparently he says there's actually quite a few people here tonight, and we'll get around to acknowledging all of them sooner or later. Now, I'm sure at the show he pointed out whoever else was there. The only other person on the album is on the second disc is Buddy Rich, who comes up on stage to play a song with Sammy.
Right.
And Buddy, of course, you know, notoriously a prick.
Right.
And he's like, and Sammy's like, "Hey, I did it for you the other night. You know, just do it. Just come up here." And he does. And then Sammy goes, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to go a little long, Frank, because, you know, I should point out we're recording tonight for Mr. Sinatra's label, Reprise Records." He goes, "Yeah, can you bring the vibraphone out?" And he ends up playing this fucking vibraphone thing with Buddy Rich.
Yeah.
And you're like, what an incredible moment. Yeah. And it's one of those records too where everything about it to me is perfect.
Yeah.
The album cover, the art, the way it's laid out, the song list. So to me it's absolutely essential, and I would tell anybody that has even a mild interest in it, if you could track that record down, that is essential.
So that's one I have to add, because I love Sammy, and I've only ever come across him passively.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So,
and I'm a fan, like somebody pointed out to me once, they're like, you're kind of like with Sammy Davis Jr. the way people are with Elvis.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, it's not as, like, it isn't a weird thing, like an obsessive thing.
Right.
But it's just one of those, guys that I latched onto at some point early.
Yeah.
And just continued to.
I'm sure I saw him when he was on, reruns on All in the Family.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I guarantee I saw him on Carson when I would sneak down.
Oh, sure.
My parents would see me and go, "Okay, you can watch a little bit of it." It was a little too adult for me, but if I snuck down, while they were watching TV late at night, they'd let me watch a little bit of it. So I'm sure I knew who he was. So by the time I was in record buying mode as a young teenager, if I saw one of his tapes or something that was 50 cents, a buck, 25 cents at a yard sale, I'd start picking them up.
Yeah.
They had funny names on them. I didn't know anything about anybody like that. I'm like, that's my parents',
Yeah, exactly, sure.
generation and era. So I may not like it, but for this money, I'll get it. And what's Candyman? What is it? Right?
Like
so,
one of his,
Right. So I didn't know. So I'd buy the tapes, and then of course, if you've ever heard any of his music, all across the board, some of it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
And some of it's ridiculous, and I mean that in both ways. Some of it's incredibly well done, and it's really polished, and it's amazing virtuosity, and some of it's really silly. I bought a CD in my early 20s, and it was one of those, rehash CDs that he had nothing to do with, I'm sure, right? Yeah. Some record company just put it out.
Yeah.
And it had a song called The People Tree on it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And it's this, it almost sounds like a Sesame Street song, right? So that was back in the day when anything that was weird or amusing amused me. But along the way, I became a fan. And so into my adult years, record shopping, you'd go through, and all of a sudden you'd be in that D bin, and his records would pop out. And nobody cared at that time. And he had a million records. Yeah. So you just keep picking them up one by one. But over time, what started as, that's just kind of funny.
Right.
And it's just kind of a niche thing. And you put it on, and people go, "What's that?" Amuse your friends on a mixtape.
Right.
I started to become a fan. I'm
like, totally.
You know what, though?
Right. Yeah.
There's some deep songs. All of a sudden, you get the right album.
Yeah.
Like you said, on Reprise, and it's an album from like '66.
Yeah.
I've got this great I forget the name of it. That's all right. It's just, I bought it for the cover, and of course I knew who Sammy was.
Right.
And it's this very stylized 70s. It almost looks like a sunset. It's black, and it's got this big red orange circle. Yeah. And he's smoking a cigarette, and he's got it's in this kind of pop art style. Where he's he's in silhouette and
Looks like a Blue Note album.
Yeah, and he's all purple and stuff, and it's just
Yep.
you're like, wow, that cover alone.
Yeah,
I had it framed on my wall for like 20 years.
Nice.
Just, but you put the record on, you're like, kind of for me like Neil Diamond, which started as a joke in the same way. It was just something funny. My parents liked it.
Yeah,
And
but then
some of the stuff
eventually-
was silly. But then like there are some good cuts.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, this guy actually.
I love the Greek album. That's a good
right,
record.
along with some of the overplayed stuff,
Right.
or
Yeah,
the
Hot August Night is
or
good
the
too.
pot song,
Yeah.
Right, Neil Diamond's got some silly stuff. Along the way, you realize there's a reason why these guys lasted so long, even back in the day, was there were some legitimate songs in there. So you become a fan both ways, which is fun.
On that record too, one of the things he does that I think is amazingly. It's always amazed me. I just listened to it the other day. It's always amazed me the confidence he had in himself that periodically in the songs he will leave the. I don't know how to really explain it. He'll start injecting comedy into a song where there, there's a song on there that he does, and he's singing, and it's totally serious, and he's singing it, and he's like, the line in the song is, there's a voice that comes in the night that tells you. It's a song about, not having self-confidence, about the voice in the back of your head that tells you shouldn't do things, right?
Yeah.
And he's singing it, he's like, and it's that voice that comes in the night and it whispers in your ear, don't you know you're a little fool, you'll never win. And then he goes right back into doing it,
Right.
and there's a whole part on it where he talks about his drummer, about this guy Michael Silva, the drummer.
Yeah.
And he does a medley of like 4 or 5 songs that go for it's a song, it's comedy, it's a song, it's this funny, it's a song, and the entirety of the medley is nothing but him and the drummer.
Huh.
Right.
And as a drummer myself, of course, I go right after that. But think about having a whole band on stage, a large band, I mean, with horns and everything, and having those guys all just take 5 for 10 minutes while you do a comedy music medley with just the drummer.
That's right.
And have it be that entertaining that nobody's going, dude, we really gotta, it's a fantastic
Sammy
record.
came from vaudeville, is that right?
Right, yeah.
As far as I know, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
of course.
know.
Yeah.
I'm not deep on him, except I've liked him for a long
Since he
time.
was a very, very little kid.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that showmanship in anything live he's going to do, right? He's not going to just get up there on stage and sing 20 songs and leave.
Yeah.
Right. No,
It's going to be a show.
It is
with
a show.
Capital S. Right?
He also does a number of.
And he's a really funny guy.
Oh, he's hysterical. And another
yeah.
thing he does on that show that's amazing is, again, even now talking about it, I'm like, I can't believe there's even more. He does a song. I don't know the name of the song, to be honest. I should, but I don't. It's a song where he's telling the bartender, set him up, Joe. It's been an awful day, whatever.
Yeah.
And he does the song in the style of 4 or 5 different people. And I swear to you, if you played any of these for somebody and told them it was who he's doing, you would buy it.
Right.
And one of them is Frank.
Huh.
And I'm like, he's going to do Frank in front of Frank in Frank's hotel, right? And it is absolutely incredible to hear him do these songs by, and he's like, can you imagine? That's how he does it, like imagine if so-and-so did the song, and he does Dean doing it.
Oh, that's funny.
Is
that one for my baby? Is that with the set him up, Joe?
Yeah, exactly. And he does it with, he goes, or imagine if, famous actors, he goes, what if they cut records? Like, what if Humphrey Bogart did it? And it's amazing. And he's so good at doing the impersonations that the Dean Martin one is insane. Because, of course, in his rendition of a Dean is hammer drunk, and and he's like, Joe, how long have we been here? Which way is the audience? And it's amazing to me. You're like, so the guy can sing. He can do everybody else's act.
That's right.
And make you think it's them.
Right.
He can dance. He's gonna play the vibe. He's not just gonna play the vibes. He's gonna play a vibe solo with Buddy Rich.
Right.
Like, and every time I listen to that record, I'm like, he's one of the most incredible entertainers probably to ever live. I mean,
Right. Mostly forgotten.
Well, and you know what's crazy about it is, to me, and again, this is something a lot of people would disagree with. As far as the Rat Pack goes, I think he's the better of all of them. I mean, Frank is amazing. I love Frank too, but Frank and Dean, and they're one-trick ponies. They do their thing, and it is what it is.
Right.
Sammy's got everything. He just, and of course, it's not lost on me, and I don't think it should be lost on anybody that to come to where he came from, considering, he's a black Jewish dude.
Right.
Who came up in vaudeville. I mean, it doesn't get much tougher to break out of anything than that. Right. And to come out on the top of it just being incredible and that record captures that. It really, really does.
One of my favorite pieces of video, you and I have watched it, Brian, many times.
Gregory Hines.
Is when Gregory Hines is at the Grammy Awards or the Oscars or something like that.
No, it's a celebration of him.
Was it a celebration?
It's like a lifetime achievement thing for Sammy.
Of Sammy, it's obviously a well-produced and well-attended, formal gathering at a very nice place. I always forget.
Yeah, people wearing tuxedos.
Absolutely, right. And Sammy's near the end. He's not in great health.
Sickly and
he's like 60 pounds.
Yeah.
And Gregory Hines is honoring him and talking about how inspirational he's been, and Gregory Hines does like a tap dance. And Sammy was famous for being a tap dancer, and he does this tap dance as a tribute, which is phenomenal because Gregory Hines is an amazing musician and actor and dancer.
Of course.
So he encourages Sammy to come up, and I'm sure that they had talked about it.
Yeah.
But Sammy's reluctant. He doesn't want to, but he pulls him out of the audience.
And he's not in great shape. Like, he needs two people to help him put his tap shoes on.
They do gingerly take him up to and put his shoes on.
Yeah.
And Gregory puts his shoes on. Of course, he starts to kiss the shoes, and Sammy's like, "Get out of here!" He's giving him like, "Come on, right?" But they start doing it, and again, Sammy not only can do it, but even at that stage, they're starting to go back and forth, tap it, tap it, tap. And then Sammy's like, tick, 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 tick. And then Gregory's like, I'll take that one deeper. And he starts doing so. And then Sammy just takes that and says, oh, you're going to do that? And does this. You couldn't do it, right? Nobody has feet that fast, right? It's ridiculous.
Especially not
who
when
cares
they're
about tap dancing
on their deathbed.
Right.
And
who cares about tap dancing? But you're watching this, and he does this whole thing, and he nails it. And Gregory Hines is like, I'm not going any further than that.
Right.
I can't. Like you can tell he wants to.
Right.
And then while he's thinking that, in that moment, Sammy takes a heel click and goes click, click, just kind of to put the and Gregory Hines
just walks away.
That's it.
And
he's done. He kisses the shoes, and it's all over. But even at that point, Sammy Davis Jr. was one of those talented guys. He's like, until my last breath, I'm going to make this way up here. The rung is way up here.
There's a live famous.
And that's a joy to see and to listen to, and that's probably why that live record, I got to get it.
Yeah, you got to hear it.
Now I have to have it. Here we go.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
and I have multiple live records by Sammy. They're all good.
Right.
There aren't any of them that are terrible, but this one is the one. And there's also a clip on YouTube of Sammy was hosting some show, I want to say in the 70s, early 70s, and he does a bit, it's maybe like 10 minutes of him with James Brown.
Oh, wow.
That is mind-boggling.
I've seen that. It's fantastic.
It's incredible, and Sammy's like, again, he just can morph into... Oh, yeah, I could play a vibe solo with Buddy Rich,
right?
But I can also come out here and do a dance number with James Brown.
And I can also sing exactly like Frank Sinatra.
I know.
Just in case you were interested in
it. What do you got?
That's going to segue perfectly into... So we're going to cut this short because you're going to take off.
Yeah.
But I think this one will become we should do a second part because I really want to talk...
I've got a couple more that need to be mentioned. Yeah.
But my essential one is actually, it's a James Brown record called Revolution of the Mind.
Wow.
It's like volume 3 of Live at the Apollo.
Okay.
71. This is when he started. Like Live at the Apollo 1 and 2 are those are supposed to be the essential
Right.
ones, and I love that era of him. That's more the soul R&B.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is when he started doing funk music.
Yeah.
And the interaction with the crowd. It's like recorded.
Is
there
it
in
with the
summer.
JBs?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fred
awesome.
Wesley's
Yeah,
on there
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
But the interaction with the band, there's a song called Escapism. It's like a whole side. And it's basically just like the funkiest thing you'll ever hear, and him like talking to the band, introducing them,
Okay.
and asking them where they're from and this and that. Like one of the guys is like, I'm from L.A., and they're all like, you hear the band go, oh, boo, and he's like,
Right.
oh, shit, I'm having second thoughts about this guy. And he's like, L.A., huh? And he's like, oh, jeez. And then like, he goes on for a little while, and he goes, all right, let me ask you one more time. Where were you born and bred? And, the guy goes, L.A., that's Lower Alabama. And the fucking crowd and him and James Brown's like, ah, my God. But it's like just this really sort of just steady thing with him like talking to this band. Just,
Right.
And it's...
And
then
of
it
course,
explodes
James
and-
Brown also, again, the consummate
Yeah.
professional, just showman, just
Yeah. Yeah. the band
riveting,
is-
you know,
yeah.
to see live, to hear, sing
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I don't know if I've ever heard that particular record, but
Yeah,
obviously I
record
will
is-
now.
Yeah, it's
Because,
that's my go-to for like just if I want to play someone like
Right,
James
yeah,
Brown.
yeah.
This is
That's
where
the one.
we're going to go deep here
Yeah,
on this
yeah.
particular
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
and then you can pull backward and forward
Yeah,
from there.
yeah,
I got into James doing this basically the same thing that I did with Neil Diamond,
Yeah.
Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
I found a tape or a record or a CD that was very inexpensive.
yeah,
I mean, and it wasn't just with those guys; it was with thousands of or
Right.
hundreds of bands anyway. Just take that flyer based
Yeah.
on nothing more. But I know who this guy is.
Yeah.
I know people know who he is.
yeah,
I've never heard a song by him except anything that was used in a movie.
Right,
That was on.
right.
I feel
Yeah,
good.
right,
Maybe I
right.
knew that, right?
yeah,
So I'd buy these, one-off tapes that were made by, these gray area record companies.
Yeah.
And there's tons of them.
Put
Oh,
these
there's a
comps
million of
together.
them,
And sometimes you just
something good.
Hit one.
you found that sweet spot where it was, these were all the extended takes that they
Right.
used to do that they didn't put on
Yeah,
the records.
Polydor didn't want to, or
Right.
whoever didn't
Yeah.
want to put it out.
So these are the 7 and 10 minute long,
Yeah.
and I found this tape called Super Bad, Super Slick
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
by James Brown. And it was, again, that kind of, early to mid 70s
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And, like Papa Don't Take No Mess.
Oh,
Right, yeah.
Which has
Yeah.
got, that's a drum beat that should have, and maybe it has been. I don't know a lot of hip hop and rap. But that particular drum riff
Yeah, it's been
Papa Don't Take
sampled.
No
should
Mess.
have been sampled a million
Oh, yeah.
times. I mean, I can
Yeah.
hear it in my head.
Yeah,
What's
I can,
the,
I can think of an EPMD song. that
See,
samples
I
it.
knew
Yeah.
anybody
Yeah.
who knew
Yeah,
that
yeah.
and was deep with it. But,
Yeah.
oh yeah, everybody
Oh, yeah.
sampled James Brown. Even a deep song like that,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
or Funky President.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
also
mean-
like 1974 is like my favorite. Like
Yeah,
the Black Caesar, which I think had that song.
Yeah, this was
Down
just-
and Out in New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
this was just one.
Hot cakes.
Yeah.
hotcakes.
For goodness sakes, just look at those cakes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Goodness sakes.
Again,
Those cakes.
and the band, right? It's
Right.
a ridiculous,
Got fat
silly
cake.
song. Right. It's ridiculous, right? But the band is cooking,
Yeah,
and they're
in the back,
so
yeah.
good,
Right.
and it's so tightly produced
Yeah.
that it doesn't matter what James.
Yeah.
It's the phone.
Right.
It's a phone book syndrome,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He reads the phone book. I'm in.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's,
And years later, I mean, I played that tape into the ground.
Yeah.
Basically, I ground it to dust.
yep.
When I was working in shipping and receiving department, and I played it for everybody
Oh, yeah.
that worked there,
Yeah.
and they always, he's playing James Brown today, and I just flip it over and over and over again
Yeah.
until people said, please stop
Yeah.
with the James Brown,
I know.
and let somebody else play something. I destroyed it. Right?
Right.
I still have it somewhere. I can't find it,
Yeah.
but I know I have it. I lost the case.
Yeah.
Yep.
So many, many, many years later, I'd forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Hadn't been thinking about it for a long time. I found the CD version.
Nice.
Same artwork, same comp.
Right.
I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to get back into this. Different mixes. Because
Oh,
again,
really? Yeah.
Oh,
this
yeah,
isn't
okay.
officially sanctioned.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
a gray
Yeah,
area,
some
So even though
Italian
it's.
record label.
Yeah, right. Something
Right.
like that. So even though it's got all the same songs.
Right.
And I'm like, why do these sound different?
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, this is probably pre-internet.
Yeah.
So flash forward many years later, and I'm going through my CDs and sorting them, and I'm like, oh, there's that Super Bad. I never bonded with that again because
Right.
it's different mixes. And
Right.
what was on the tape
Yeah.
was what was hot. That was
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
So I took it down again and listened to it. I'm like, well, they're close enough. And,
Right.
and of course, now there's the internet, and I can look, oh, okay, so this
Yeah,
gray
that's-
area label that did all these things, they did this one. When they did the tape, they got them from the original master tapes,
Right.
and when they did the CD, they got them from
Who
the
the hell
LP
knows? Right.
cuts, and they were all 6 minutes instead of 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now, the only way that all of those songs that I remember them are ever going to be reproduced again is if
Right.
they're on some box set,
Yeah.
which they may not even be,
Right.
or they're on that tape.
Yeah.
So that tape becomes put
Yeah.
to the side in my mind as one of those grail tapes.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna find it or track it. Now
Yep.
nobody has it. Nobody
Right.
cares about it.
Yeah.
Nobody's keeping it in a plastic
Yeah.
bag
Nobody's
it wasn't
reissuing it, right,
because
yeah.
it wasn't that record.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody's got the CD now,
Right.
and it's the same cover
Right.
art. So they've dismissed. They don't know.
Yeah.
It's 7 guys in the world that
Oh,
know
yeah.
that there's 2
Yeah,
different
yeah.
mixes there, and I'm one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So if anybody has Super Bad, Super Slick by James Brown on a crappy cassette, I'm your man. Look it
Yeah,
up.
let him know.
Get in contact.
With
Gotta
Sammy,
have it.
as a collector, it's been fun because so many of those exist that nobody cares about.
That's
You're
right.
able to build a pretty big collection because
Yeah.
it's a buck
isn't-
here and a buck
isn't
there.
that exciting?
And it's
Sometimes
amazing.
where you
And
start to see artists that people have largely
Yeah.
forgotten or dismissed. It's just not, even
Yeah.
if it's not in fashion for whatever reason.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I mean, you could never build a huge stable of Frank Sinatra because he was
Right.
always pretty popular, and that stuff
Still, even now.
bubbled to
Yeah.
the top. Although you could always find bargain bins full of his LPs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some of the lesser known
every
ones,
thrift
like
store.
in the wee small hours and stuff.
That's
like
my
which are-
favorite,
which
yeah.
are great records, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
glad I picked them up.
That
for
one's my favorite.
25
Wee
cents.
Small
Yeah.
Hours is my favorite.
Where are you? There was that little
Yeah.
run of those.
Right, there's another one where he's like something about I'm lonely or something
Yeah.
like that. All his sad sack
Yeah.
songs, they're great.
Songs
They're great.
for sad lovers.
Yeah,
and-
something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. Right?
yeah.
All of those ones are great.
Oh, yeah.
and we're good for 25-cent flea market and
Yeah, of course.
Goodwill
Yeah.
finds. But
Yep.
yeah, it's sometimes nice when you get on a little niche, even with a modern band, where you're like, these guys have like 10 records and nobody
Cares.
like right now, if you wanted to get into a band like Kitchens of Distinction, which I would recommend to anybody,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're not together anymore. All those guys still making music. They did make a new record in 2013
Right.
that went online and disappeared and nobody bought.
Right.
But their first, 3 records, the live thing, a couple, you can buy all this stuff for pennies
Yeah,
right now,
right.
and get blown away.
Yeah.
Say, how is this not
I know.
a band with the stature of
Yeah.
Nirvana or Smashing
Right.
Pumpkins? These guys were insane.
Yeah.
But you could go pick it up for
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
couple bucks.
We were just talking about that band. I just gave you that live record, the Shudder to Think record.
yeah, right.
And I was at Bull Moose, which is, pretty good place to find some off stuff. I mean, it's a big place. There's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, they have a
And-
huge inventory. The Bull Moose record store in Salem, New Hampshire.
Yes.
Oh, that one's huge.
Yeah, that one's very big.
It's
They
big.
Got, they got a great
and I was
inventory.
amazed.
It
I
turns
was in
over
there
a lot too, which is
Yeah.
good.
that they didn't have any Shudder to Think CDs. I was like, I can't believe that, right?
Isn't that incredible?
Well,
Sometimes you
so
go to a
I
store
looked
like
on
that,
their searchable
those
database,
big things are missing.
and they have like one copy of one Shudder to Think record in like their Portsmouth store. That's
Right.
it. I'm like, in this entire giant record store chain,
In
you
the
have
chain.
one copy of one CD. But so we were down at Ron's today, and Ron was like, "Oh yeah, I don't have any of those records either." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, now I know it wasn't the biggest band in the world or
Right,
anything,
right.
but they had a bunch of records, and there was a
Yeah.
time where you saw them all the time, and
Well,
I
they were on
find it.
Discord. They were on
Yeah.
Discord earlier, and then
Yeah.
Again,
they
they're
got signed.
in the general scheme of things a very small band.
Yeah,
But
right.
when I worked at a record store, an indie record store, I
Yeah,
knew
they
who
were
they
always
were. I,
good,
I
yeah.
never even heard any of their albums,
Yeah.
and I knew who they were.
But it
you know?
seems like one of those bands you should still find that
Yeah,
at a used
exactly.
record store. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to attribute that to. Maybe just
think-
that
I think-
the people that care enough that they
Yeah.
never get rid of the stuff. and
That's
it's,
mostly it.
Yeah.
That you'll go to a thrift store or a music store or anybody that would carry any used media at all, whether it was just given away and donated or sold back to the store,
Right.
like a Bull Moose or a Goodwill or a Salvation Army.
Yeah.
And you will find hundreds of copies of what on CD? Pick one.
Fucking any Billy Joel record.
Right.
Billy Joel, right? Plenty of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and even newer stuff, right?
Yeah.
Godsmack.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
yeah.
How many
Pearl
copies
Jam.
of
Right. The second live album. Like.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Right,
How many
yeah.
copies of that record are
Yeah.
you going to find?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The
Sponge.
the first or
Yeah.
second,
Yeah.
the first or second Dave Matthews
Yeah, yeah.
albums, Hootie and the Blowfish,
Right.
Yeah.
right? You're going to find that stuff in the dozens
Yeah. And the,
because so much of that got out there, and then people used it, if you will, consumed it, and then got rid of it. They
Yeah.
moved it along.
Right.
With something like Shudder to Think or Built to Spill,
Right.
smaller bands with niche,
Yeah.
big audiences but niche audiences. they got out there, they sold it. The people who liked it kept it,
Right.
still have it, or when they got moved along, it went to a flea market or got thrown
Right.
away.
Yeah.
Nobody saw any inherent value.
Nobody ever bought the
Ironically-
CD for the one song they
Right.
heard on MTV,
Right.
and then once they get sick of the song, they didn't
Right.
need the record anymore.
Ironically, nobody ever moves the Shudder to Think album on to even the thrift store
Right.
because they don't think there's any value. But
Yeah.
they absolutely take the Dave Matthews, Hootie and the
yeah.
Blowfish,
Yeah.
right? All of that. They take that
Yeah.
rate to any store,
Yeah.
which has no value
Right,
because there's
yeah.
so many, thinking it's got value because people
Yeah.
would know what this
Oh,
is.
yeah.
Right,
Well,
yeah.
like
Right?
in working in used stores and just being around music, like we all have been in
Yeah.
our lives, and going in stores and stuff. You know, like when Michael Jackson died, like, you know, I'd have
Yeah.
people like,
That's right.
Hey, I have a copy of Thriller. Is that going to be? And I'm like, no, there's 7 trillion copies of that
Right.
in the world.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
everyone
It's the
has
same
it. It's
with,
not worth it, you know.
It's the same with comic books. When I
Yeah.
work at a comic book store,
Yeah.
every week, invariably, somebody would come in with a copy of The Death of Superman
Right.
and want $1,000 for it.
Right,
And
yeah.
I'd be like, I'll be honest with you, dude, we have 3 long boxes full of
Right.
it
Yeah.
that have never been circulated,
Yeah.
and we have 10 copies of it in the
Right.
dollar box. And
Yeah.
they're like,
Right.
no, but Superman died. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but it was also the most overprinted book in the history. There are
Right.
millions
Yeah.
of them
Yeah, that's the
in
one.
mint
Yeah.
condition. So I think that's the same thing with. That's why you can buy any Beatles record that ever existed
Yeah.
anywhere for
Anywhere.
nothing.
Right.
But like jazz records are hard to come by because people that buy them don't get rid of them.
Right. That's
right.
And then by the time they do, it's worth $500.
Right.
When I started using the website discogs.com to look up stuff,
Yeah.
you know, it's basically the Wikipedia but for
Yeah.
music, but it's even more than that.
Yeah, it's a great
crowdsourced.
site.
Helps you find pressings.
Yeah,
and
it's
all- I love it,
crowdsourced, but
yeah.
it's really deep in the
Yeah,
weeds. It's for
yeah.
people who.
Yep.
I'm looking for the one with the blue border around
Right.
it that they put out in,
Yeah.
you know, in Brazil.
Right.
That's the only
Yep.
pressing I want because that's the one where it's
Yeah.
14 seconds longer on side too.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Right.
deep in the weeds,
Yeah.
geek
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I liked it. I'm like, well, that's the clearinghouse for information.
Yeah.
And then I got totally deep into it. I started contributing. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I've got 40, 50 records here that I could take photographs of and post
Yeah.
because they're not on here because
Yeah,
they say,
yeah.
hey, listen, this is crowdsourced.
Yeah.
Like Wikipedia,
Right.
add to the database and we
Yeah.
grow by that.
Yeah.
And so as I was doing that, I eventually graduated to say, well, now I might start buying
Buying
stuff.
stuff, yeah.
And of course, that gets very dangerous because everything,
Oh,
I
I've been
mean,
doing that,
everything,
yeah.
things you don't, I bet you there was a band called Force 10 that put out an album for 1 second.
Right.
Okay? And I bought the tape and I loved it. I bet you they never put out any singles. I'm
Right.
going to look them up. Oh, look, they have 4 singles. There's
Right.
one from Italy. It's $1.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Oh, I got to have that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got a B-side I've never heard. I'm definitely buying. And pretty soon you're like, what am I doing?
Right.
So then hopefully you
Yeah.
graduate to, I'm going to sell stuff
Right.
here.
Yeah,
and of
yeah.
course, that's a little bit of a procedure.
I haven't
but
done that yet, but I've been thinking about because, like today I sold stuff to Ron, but not
Yeah.
our records, but just like catalog stuff, but
Right.
stuff that might be worth a little more. I want to maybe start putting up on there that I
yeah,
have aside.
well,
but
so here's my advice for that quickly
Yeah.
is that you've got a very dedicated and focused audience
Yeah.
to be selling stuff,
Yeah.
but you've got to be brutally honest
with it.
about what you're selling
Oh, I know, yeah,
and
the-
really
the-
try to downgrade it
Yeah.
because that's my only
Oh,
negative
yeah, yeah.
experience as a seller
Yeah, same here.
is that my rating, if you will, of this is very good or this is
Right.
mint
Some
condition,
people, right.
they don't believe it, and they
Right.
don't want it, and they're going to
Yeah.
give you trouble about it.
Yeah.
Other than that,
Yeah.
I've had great experiences buying and selling. Haven't been stiffed
Yeah.
once,
Yeah,
but here's what gets addictive on the sell as a seller
yeah,
is that you look at your collection,
Yeah.
and you look at your stack of stuff. Most of us have one somewhere,
Yeah.
even if it's in the collection,
yeah,
full of stuff that you don't want anymore.
Right, yeah.
Or you listen to it, but nobody cares.
Right.
You know that there isn't anybody
Yeah.
looking for a Jimmy Griffin CD from 1958,
Right.
a repress,
Right.
But there are.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
they
yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And when
That's
you
us,
realize,
right? That's us, yeah.
right. When you realize, I spent. You don't realize you're doing this, but I
Right.
spent 10 years going to Newbury Comics and picking just out of a hat
Yeah.
through there. They had a whole line of fantasy. That was a jazz
Yeah,
label
fantasy
in the
records,
40s and
yeah.
50s. Fantasy, and they had some sub-labels.
Yeah.
Reissues on CDs that came out in the 90s.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were Rudy Van Gelder production. I mean,
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
top albums.
Yeah.
But then everything else, everything that they could pull out of their vault, they put out on CD.
yeah,
And at some point, Newbury bought them out
Yeah.
and had every one of those CDs in there for $3.99.
Yeah, I went. Yeah.
$4.
One of my favorite jazz records, Booker Irvin, The Trance, was one of those, and like I remember finding it new for $3.99.
$3.99 for those CDs. So I would go every week or every couple of weeks or whenever I went, and I would pick out. I eventually got to the point where I would just go A to Z through the whole jazz section, and just anything that had that label, they had a very distinctive spine. I would just put in a stack, and then I would flip them all over, and look through them and say if it's piano, bass, and drums, or piano, bass, drums, and sax, or trumpet, I'll buy it. Without knowing anything about the session guys.
Every Red Garland album.
Right? Now, if I recognize somebody, sure. Right? But other than that, if it's organ and trombone, I'm not that interested. And I would just pick through that, and I built myself up a library of that stuff. But of course, I'd say more than a quarter, maybe almost half. It didn't throw me.
Right.
Wasn't my start putting that on Discogs. 35, 45, 55, 65. I've gotten
CDs,
$75 for some of these.
Especially
and I didn't pay any more than $4. Not one day did I pay more than $4.
That's a little secret that a lot of people don't know. Like CDs
are huge. Absolutely phenomenal.
Like,
you know why? Because they're just like vinyl. Remember when it quickly died?
Yeah, they go out of print.
But they were still everywhere. A lot of us went, I guess I got to get rid of mine, or people just got rid of it. That's when I started buying. So I got lucky. I was like, all these dollar bins,
a lot of CD collectors, too, that are label collectors. They want everything that ever came out on such and such a label, regardless of what the music is. So, or people that will buy 115 different CDs of the same record because... this one was when it came out, and then the next year they changed the indicia, and then this one was from France, and this one, and there's a lot of that stuff that people don't know is what goes on.
And right now, like people, like if you're still listening to us,
now that we're not talking about live albums at all,
now that this has no bearing.
But we're definitely coming back to live albums.
But for
stick around.
If you're like a music fan right now, or you're like getting into a band that like you don't really know much about. It's a buyer's market for like you can get a whole catalog of a band for $30.
It is, but you have to know where to shop because on social media, I'm a member of a lot of groups that are all related to music, and a lot of people. I can't tell you whether they're young or old. I'm not checking their profiles, but a lot of people are stunted and don't have about where to get stuff. Now we're spoiled in New England because there is just an embarrassment of riches here of record stores, of flea markets, of Salvation Army type stores, warehouse stores, all kinds of places where you can get a lot of stuff. And if you even just gently know what you're looking for. You can get a lot, and if you just blindly buy, you're going to have a ton of great stuff. There's places in this country where you get none of that, and there's places in the world because social media is global where people have no exposure to any of that.
Same thing with the touch on the live albums. Same thing with live perform. We literally, if you wanted to, if you had the money. You could go to a show
every night and see
every single night here
and get blown away. Not only see a show, but get blown away.
Which we all probably I did in the '90s.
Absolutely.
I was going out 3-4 nights a week.
Yeah, me too.
Now
at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. I'd be in the Middle East. We'd go.
I was driving into the Middle East on nights when I didn't even know who was playing, just because somebody decent is probably playing.
We go to the Paradise on Wednesday and say, let's go down to the Middle East on Friday, see who's kicking around. And if we're still into it on Sunday, I don't have to work Monday. I mean, either on Sunday night there's an all ages show in this basement. Let's go to that. I mean, 3 shows in a week, no problem.
And then Wednesday we're going to see Rush. For
that's right.
30.
Yeah, we'll go to the stadium.
And I have my friend Ian lives in Ohio, in Cincinnati. And he's forever lamenting like all these tours that we'll be putting up on Facebook. Like, I can't wait to see this. He's like, I have to drive 4 hours like into the next state to. Like, what do you? I'm like, Cincinnati's a big city. He's like, nobody plays here ever.
I'm always amazed when there isn't a Boston date. I get very incensed. I'm so spoiled. So spoiled. I'm like, how is there not a Boston date?
You guys aren't playing Boston.
This is ridiculous. Right. This doesn't make any sense.
Sometimes it's like Philly is the closest. You could feasibly do that.
Absolutely. Well, that's the other thing. We again, you get spoiled.
In the Northeast.
Right. So, you're like, it's in Concord, New Hampshire. Forget it. I'm not driving 45 minutes.
Just like, I'm not.
It's not in a half-hour radius. You're like, you spoiled.
I'm not driving all the way to friggin' Mohegan Sun.
Are you kidding me?
Whatever, but
living like 25 minutes from Providence now is good because there's a few good.
That's very good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so the moving target's like a half hour from my house.
Awesome.
With Jonas, with Jonesy.
And I mean, right here next door to where I am in Lowell,
Yeah.
there's a never-ending stream of tiny bars and gallery spaces
Yeah.
where I guarantee any night of the week, even in the weeknight, if you wanted to go down to Lowell after the sun goes down and
You'll
walk
see
around,
something.
you will walk in front of some place where somebody's playing. You're like, oh, I want to see what's going on in here.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've been really lucky with that. around
There's
here.
even an arena that's within a half an hour drive of me up in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So if there's a big band coming through and they hit Manchester, I can be there in a half an hour. I know all the secret parking spots. It's really.
I mean,
really,
in Lowell, there's the arena there where I mean, Yes played there.
I saw the two of my best shows I ever saw. James Brown I saw in Lowell at the Lowell Auditorium.
Awesome, yeah.
That
it's
was
a great
like in
venue.
'97 or something, and then the Dio set like Heaven and Hell. They played
amazing.
at the Songus or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
and
called.
that's a great venue. The sound in there is
Yeah, the
amazing.
sound was
And I've
great,
seen
man.
a ton of shows in
Yeah.
there. We saw.
Did you see that Yes show there?
I didn't see Yes.
They have
there.
a DVD.
They put
There's
it
a
out on
DVD.
DVD.
They did,
though.
yeah. It
It's a
was
good
a
show.
special show. I didn't
Yeah.
go to that one either. Been to every other one around it, but for some reason wasn't going
Yeah.
to the Lowell show.
Saw Jethro Tull in there.
Yeah.
I
I got
saw
kicked out of that
Morrissey.
show.
Oh, did you?
And I went to see the Jeff. I saw almost all of it from the backstage through the loading dock because I got kicked out.
No, you didn't get kicked out. He went outside.
Yeah,
but
right.
didn't
They
know
wouldn't
that
let
you
you
couldn't
back
come
in.
back in.
Yeah, it was back in the day when even if you had a ticket, you weren't
they
coming
wouldn't.
back
I
in.
know, right?
Now everybody goes out to smoke because you can't
Yeah.
smoke inside and nobody
they have a
cares.
roped off
But
area.
then you
We saw
can.
Morrissey in there.
Yeah.
That was at the
That's
Lowell
right.
Memorial Auditorium.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
I saw Weird Al in there.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a great venue.
Yeah.
I like that place, and it's right there.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw Tori Amos there too.
Yeah.
That was an amazing show. We sat right up front for that.
Yeah. Oh, and
Which
in
is-
other news, I saw Bill Cosby in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he didn't,
You didn't
try
do
to
anything weird or anything?
drug me or anything like that.
That's
but
good.
He did, and he was funny. That was before, obviously, the downfall.
Yeah.
So it was. I think the only comedy show. Well, I mean, Weird Al is a comedy thing, but his music. But you know what I mean? Yeah, that's the only stand-up comedy I saw there. But there's always a lot of stand-up comics performing there. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, we will. On that note, Bill Cosby.
Yeah, let's leave it at Bill.
We'll leave it at Bill Cosby,
Right.
And we will definitely continue the live record thing another time because I think we.
Oh, I think
I got a bunch of stuff here. So.
Rock and roll.
Awesome.
You could.